All right, we are live. Thank you for bearing with us. There was some delay in Mary getting out of church because of a parent not picking up their child in a timely manner. Not her, a different parent. But we're here now, and I got an all-star cast with me today. Today we're going to be discussing how Islam condones and allows for sexual abuse. And I want to be clear from the start that we're not saying that Islam causes people's immoral behavior, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't correct that either. It may say that it's illegal or not allowed, but it doesn't provide any mechanism to actually do anything about it. And the victim is often doubly the victim. First, of the victim because of the victim of the sexual abuse, and then the victim again because they can't tell anyone about it, or it'll just bring further shame upon them and their family. Let me open us with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this time together. We thank you for the technology that allows us to connect with fellow believers and unbelievers from all around the world. We ask that everyone watching this show approach the material with an open mind, that they not dismiss what we have to say because they don't like it or it doesn't fit with their cultural background or their pop culture, but instead take a look at what we're offering, look at the sources, see if what we're saying is true. We know that there are many, many people in the world who have suffered from sexual abuse at one point in their lives. We ask that you be with everyone who is suffering ongoing grief from this tragedy, and that you give them a sense of peace and comfort only you can provide. We ask that you give us the wisdom to talk about these sensitive issues in such a way that change is able to take place. You know, we're not highlighting these things to make fun of people or make fun of Islam, but rather we're talking about these things because there's a real problem that really destroys many lives. And the only way to move forward is to talk about it, not to censor it, not to pretend it didn't happen like Islam teaches, but to talk about it, to move forward. And of course, ultimately, healing comes from you. So we pray for your supernatural healing from those suffering from sexual abuse as well. We ask that you be with us today and you guide our discussion. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So we have a whole panel here today. I'll introduce them one by one. First, we have Hadja Cross. Her channel is Resurrecting Truth. Everyone's channel links are in the video description. She is here today to talk a little bit about her own experience with these issues and issues that she saw in the Muslim community. She's an ex-Muslim who converted to Christianity. I'll now give her a chance to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Haja Cross and I'm an ex-Muslim from Guinea. And I have a YouTube channel, Resurrecting_Truth. And we are here to just, shed a light on the dark side of Islam.
Excellent. Next up, we have Lloyd. Regular on this channel, but I'll go ahead and give him a chance to introduce himself. He's going to be talking about what the Sharia teaches on these matters.
Yeah, hi, Lloyd, South African. I live in Warsaw, Poland, and yeah, I'll be trying to contribute from Islamic law to provide a perspective on how Islam views these things within its legal system, within its court system. And yeah, those who know me, my focus is on Islamic law, not the Quran, not the Hadith, but the actual legal system that Islam imposes, the political system that it imposes.
Excellent. And last but not least, we have Too Many Marys, or Mary Harp. She goes by different names. And she's going to be talking today about some of the real life examples of this behavior as practiced by imams of all things.
Yep. A lot of you guys here know me, and yeah, I'm going to be focusing on current events, ahadith, that sort of thing. And your volume might be low, Thaddeus. Sorry, am I
Yes.
too loud, everyone? I just want to check because sometimes I'm very loud.
Yep, I can turn my volume up a bit.
Yeah, it is a bit low, Thaddeus.
How about now? Better? Any better?
I think you're slightly louder.
All right, I'll just go ahead and bump it up. Now it's going to be definitely louder.
Oh, that's much better. Now you and Lloyd are about the same volume.
Hopefully it doesn't peak. If anyone else has comments on the sound, you can put those in chat, but we'll assume we're good because, we can't hear ourselves. So I can hear the other three, of course, but I can't hear myself, and likewise they can't hear themselves. So it's a bit difficult to get the volume right, but hopefully everything's good now. So we're going to start with the subject of rape. Of course, I don't need to explain what rape is, although maybe I do, since Islam doesn't really have much of a concept of rape, as we're going to see. They have a concept of illegal sexual activity, but which rape would be an example of, but they don't really have a special category of rape. Extramarital sex is the same as rape. They're kind of equivalent. And that's obviously a big problem because while both are, as Christians, we agree that all sex outside of marriage is immoral. It's certainly not the same thing for someone to have a consensual relationship outside of marriage and someone to be forced to have sex with someone whom they don't want to. We're going to be looking at some examples, unfortunately, of this kind of behavior being practiced by imams. Mary, I believe you had, or you wanted to open up on this. No?
Well, I just assumed that we'd go straight to Sharia and then I'd fill in.
Okay. Yep. We can
examples.
start with. Yep. We can start with the Sharia then.
Sorry. And this is heavily going to be Lloyd's show because this is truly his specialty and he's got incredibly good material on this.
All right, Lloyd, the pressure's on you.
I was not expecting. I thought you guys would be talking about examples. And
I can do that first then. So, for example, there have been many cases of imams sexually abusing both boys and girls. It is exceptionally common for a form of punishment in madrasas to just be rape. There have been cases in Nigeria of boys' schools that are just hideously sexually exploitative. They have two different Islamic boys' schools that were residential in Nigeria have been recently raided because they had people, they had the boys actually chained up in huts and all sorts of horrible things and were sexually abusing them as well as physically abusing them. Just really awful things. There are many examples of mass rape in Pakistan, where they are in Afghanistan both, but especially it's been coming out into the press in Pakistan because Pakistan actually has some level of press accountability sometimes, occasionally. Just all these horrific stories of madrasas with just massive, like the teachers who are running the madrasas consider the madrasas basically to be their sexual playground a lot of times and just abuse people. And they'll often single out one child that they feel is vulnerable in some way and can be exploited and they can get away with. Maybe they're not from a particularly secure family. Maybe they just think that this child's already fragile for one reason or another. And so they're not only preying on children, but a lot of times they're preying on the most vulnerable of the children. They're deliberately choosing them because of their vulnerability. And there was also a case, and it was covered on Somali Christian TV. And they've set it to private now, and I assume that that's because the YouTube algorithm was extremely displeased with the fact that it had it had sensitive topics, obviously, because it was about it has a video of an imam confessing to how he would take this little bitty girl, like 8 years old, and when she failed to recite her Quran recitations correctly, he would keep her after, and he explicitly describes how he would just toss her skirts over her face and then assault her. Tiny girl, and this kind of thing it's endemic. It's not like there are always going to be corrupt and evil people in every system, people trying to take advantage, trying to do things. But it's a question of whether or not the system promotes this at higher or lower levels. Rape as a form of punishment and humiliation is phenomenally common as well. You have the gangs in Birmingham and all over England are the most publicized ones. There have also been those in Sweden and Germany have also exploited young girls to assault them. These aren't imams, but they are Muslims who are doing it because they are Muslim. And in this case, they're seeing someone as an outsider who doesn't count as a good Muslim woman in some way, right? And they're exacting their jihad in this way to humiliate and destroy the infidel or whatever. But if they see you as an outsider, and anyway, this is something that's used by Shias against the Sunni, and it's just an endemic problem in Islam. And it's because Islam is a religion of hypersexualization. Everything is about controlling sex because women are seen as this walking, like, libidinous temptation all the time, and it's expected that men are going to be forever just ready to pounce on any woman. That's why the Quran says that the reason that you're supposed to cover up, and you're supposed to cover up to the extent that you cannot be recognized one woman from another. They cannot tell who you are. And the reason that you're supposed to be covered up like this is that so the Muslim men will recognize you and you will not be abused or harmed. So who's going to do the harming in this context? It would be the Muslim men. It's the only people, it's the only people in the context of the Quran. I'm not talking about like the context of the Hadith or something else. In the Quran itself, it says that this is why women need to be dressed in this way, so that they are not harmed or abused, so that Muslim men know who the believing women are and they are not abused. So this assumes that the normal behavior of Muslim men towards unbelieving women or improper hypocrite women is to abuse them. That is embedded in this verse.
So the Muslim's going to say, well, yeah, maybe there's a couple examples of rape in an Islamic country, but we all know that there's hundreds and hundreds of rapes in the United States or in Europe, and there's only a handful in the history of Saudi Arabia. So clearly Islam doesn't allow this, and it's just a few isolated examples. Why would it be that rape would be very rarely reported in the Islamic world?
There's perhaps I can show something. I'll show my screen. Is that all right?
Yep.
That's just an aside. It's in the Islamic doctrine of lying. This is a reference from what's called the Ihya Ulum al-Din. So it's called the revival of the Islamic sciences, of the Islamic religious sciences. So this is written by the most highly revered scholar in Islam after Muhammad himself. And that's Muhammad al-Ghazali. And this is also regarded as the most read Islamic spiritual text after the Quran itself, this Ihya Ulum al-Din. And the Islamic scholars hold that if the Quran had to disappear, they could replace the Quran, they could rebuild it from this document, because this takes the Quran and explains and explicates everything. So notice this line here. It says, to disclose an obscene act is also an obscene act. It's illegal. So this is illegal in Islam because it brings shame to Islam. So they cannot reveal something which, even if true, would bring shame to Islam. And then I'll stop sharing for the moment. I'll go find another reference. But so also it's illegal.
So the victim becomes the victim twice over, because they're the victim, and then if they dare to share this, then they've brought shame on their family, they brought shame on themselves, and they can be accused of illegal sexual activity themselves. Someone is a victim of rape. They say that I was raped by this man. And then they say, where's your proof? Do you have your 4 witnesses? They say, no, I don't have 4 witnesses. It was a rape. Like, well, you just admitted to having illegal sexual activity, so I guess we have to punish you now.
Yeah. The law states that if you have the ability to remain virginal, or to remain, to not do something, you should do so. And of course, if you do, then you must be killed. Then you will be stoned to death. So, and but also, in Islam, to reveal something that is true that would bring shame on the deen, I'll go to that in a moment. So as you guys talk, I'll just go to the reference. But to reveal something that is true that would bring shame on Islam is slander. So remember, in non-Islamic law, slander is to tell the truth, is to lie and smear someone and cause them financial and reputational harm by lying about them. In Islamic law, to slander is to say something that is true that would cause embarrassment. And that would bring shame. So.
Yes, exactly. And here's the problem, right? Because, you say something is illegal. You say something is forbidden. But then if someone does that crime, then there's no punishment, because to reveal the crime is also shameful, is also illegal, is also immoral. So then it just effectively, even though you can say with your mouth this is illegal, it effectively makes it legal. It makes it such that, okay, the person might personally, be sinful, but there's nothing in society to stop it from happening again and again and again.
Yeah. So I just shared my screen. I want to show you a reference. This is a general application of the rule. So this is dealing with the dead body, but the same principle applies, and I'll show this. So if you notice something good, it is sunnah to mention it. But if you notice something bad, it is unlawful to mention it, because this is slander. So you see something true, but don't say anything, because that would be slander. So let's go have another look at the full definition of slander at R2.2 here. So let's just go find that. Search software. There we go. Slander. So we're going to go to, so I'm using here the Reliance of the Traveler. This is the most famous, the most popular Islamic law manual in the world. So the meaning of slander, ghaba. So there's a couple of different laws at play here, but this is slander. And just briefly, slander means to mention anything concerning a person that you would dislike. So this is just a general overview from this lecture, from this compendium. But to say anything that is true that you just wouldn't like. So that also starts to explain why you're slandering the deen, you're making it imperfect. Also, it's illegal for a Muslim to say anything that would shine any sort of light that would cast Islam in anything less than the most perfect light. Because according to the Quran, today I've perfected your religion for you. To say anything that would make Islam imperfect is illegal and is punishable by death. This is ridda, this is apostasy. I can go into that later, but you're not allowed to say anything that would reveal Islam to be anything but perfect.
Exactly. So Mary found a couple examples that made the press. But the Muslim could still just say that's isolated. It doesn't happen very often. It happens much more common in the West. Well, first of all, that's irrelevant. Where it's more common, it's wrong wherever it happens. And we absolutely condemn anyone who abuses a child or rapes a woman in the West.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
it's more than that. If you go ahead and share the particular one, I have it up right now to be shared. All right. So notice the subheadline. Up to 80% of women in Pakistan's jails are charged under rules that penalize rape victims. So this is
Can you zoom into
80%
that,
of the
because
women.
that's almost invisible? Can you zoom in?
Oh, yes, I can. Let me see if I can
Control
actually
plus
just make
or
the screen smaller. That should
control
zoom it
plus.
in
You
by
either
default.
control plus or you do
Yeah, I'll do both.
control mouse wheel. Yeah. You
Oh,
can close that
There we
little
go.
yellow
Much
thing.
better.
more. Look at that. All right. So 80% of women in Pakistan's jails are charged under rules that penalize rape victims. 80%. So this is these are women who, in spite of knowing that their terrible, terrible, terrible chances, who still go to the law because they are so hurt that they want something, anything to be done. Please help me. I've been raped. And still, 80% of women in jails are there because they were raped and made a claim that they can't substantiate. Now, not only do you have to have 4 witnesses to a rape, but it's only 4 if it's a man. If it's a woman, you'd have to have 8 because you have to have 2 women for every man. And you also have to talk about the degree to which they have to have witnessed the rape. Because in the ahadith, Muhammad was told that someone committed zina. They committed fornication. They said, "Oh, did you see him commit fornication?" And the people said, "Do you have 4 witnesses?" And they said, "Yes, there are 4 witnesses." "Did you see them commit fornication?" And they said, "Yes, we all saw it." And he said, "Well, did you see them having intercourse like a pin dipping into an inkwell?" Meaning that you actually saw penetration with your eyes. And three of them said, "Yes, we saw actual penetration." And the last one said, "No, I just saw the woman's legs up over the man's shoulders and her making," and in the hadith, it gives like a transcription of sexual noises, right? And that was not enough because they did not see the pen dipping in the inkwell. So that's the degree to which you have to have evidence before you can have any hope of justice. And the whole reason that Muhammad did this is because he lost the stomach to stone people, particularly his own followers, because if he was stoning because his men were committing fornication all the time. And so if he actually continued to stone all the Muslim men who were fornicating, he wouldn't have had an army left, and that wouldn't have left him in a rather poor situation. So he redefined that. Also, I think the dude's name is Asim. What Lloyd said about concealing something. There is a very influential imam who has a channel on YouTube who answers questions even in English, right? And it's great because very few of these imams answer questions in English. And one of the questions was from a man who said, "I committed illegal sexual intercourse, and I feel so guilty now that I'm going to go to the hellfire. So should I admit it and get the punishment of it for it, and then that way I won't go to the hellfire?" Because there's this weird thing on Islam where, like, if you get the punishment for something now, you don't get punished for it later. And the answer from the imam was, "No, you should not do that. You should not do that because one of Allah's names is the concealer, because Allah will hide your sins for you." And because they stole from the Bible all the time, right? And one of the things that they stole is that at the very end, you know how it says in Revelation how everyone great and small before the great white throne will answer for their sins, right? And how Jesus said that anything that's concealed will later be revealed. And that's connected in Christianity. Well, for Muhammad, his followers were not so happy about the idea that all of their evil deeds will become known to everyone. So he said that Allah will actually be hiding out behind a hijab, like a veil, and he'll call to you to come up to him. And then behind the veil, so that you're still all hidden, you can whisper all of your sins to him, and he will ask you about all of your sins by whispering them to you, because goodness knows that Allah is so concerned about your pride that he's going to conceal all of your sins for you forever. And so, because one of Allah's names is the concealer of sins, the hider of sins, if you did not get caught doing something terrible, it's because Allah has determined to hide that for you, and you should just be grateful. So
Can
certainly
I
do
show some
not
of that
confess.
from the Islamic law?
Absolutely.
Me-
While you're
So-
bringing that up, super sticker from Islam Mentera o Verdad. Thank you for your donation. De Kulin says, where is the justice? And that is the question. Where is the justice in Islamic law?
Yeah, it's not about justice. It's about there is no justice in Islam, because Allah has determined who shall be saved and who shall be lost. Before you're born, before you do anything, you will act according to Allah's decree, period. And Allah forgives whatever he wills in the end. And Allah has led astray everyone who goes to the hellfire has been led astray by Allah, or has just been determined, because they might not have actually done anything wrong yet. And all of this is just the way it is. That's just how it works with this crazy system, where you're just like, that's it. Sorry, what you don't hope for justice. You just hope that Allah will cover up your sins so that they don't have to be paid for. That's basically it.
So within Islamic law, right, if you go to the Islamic doctrine of lying, so Islam has numerous types of lying. They've got, just like Eskimos have a number of different words for snow, Islam has a number of different terms for lying, right? So notice there is no sin in that falsehood which benefits a Muslim or removes a harm from him. So a lie that benefits a Muslim or removes a harm from him is considered good, right? Every man should save his life, his property, and his honor by taking recourse to falsehood. So you should lie. If it saves your honor, you should lie, right? And if harm is caused more than benefit in case of speaking the truth, then speaking the truth may be avoided. So if speaking the truth will bring you harm, then you should lie, right? And it says here, uttering a dual word saves yourself from falsehood. So in other words, double meanings, tawriya, right? This is a particular form of Islamic lying. So this is deception through ambiguity. But understand, it is perfectly lawful to save your honor and to save yourself from harm by lying. Long story short, at the end, within the sharia, the story is between you and Allah at the end of the day, not with people. So while Islam has a number of laws, every single law has an exception. Every single law has its opposite. Every single law has an out. And if I may say one thing, I'll be brief. So Islam has a number of what they call legal maxims. There's about 99 of them in total. They love that number 99, like the names of Allah, except there's multiple lists of 99 names. So Allah has like 500 names. But yeah, I know it's kind of weird. But this is, so these are the 5 normative maxims of Islamic law, the 5 major maxims. One of those is, notice here, because earlier Mary spoke about culture. Muslims will say that's not like the boys, like diddling the boys at the mosque, right? They'll say, oh, diddling the boys at the mosque, that's culture, that's not Islam. The problem is, if you look at this law here, okay, cultural usage shall have the weight of law. So Islamic law recognizes foreign cultures and their practices. And when it absorbed those cultures during its wars of conquest, it recognized those cultural practices that were established and made those lawful. So cultural usage shall have the weight of law. So here's the problem is that they say that's not Islamic, that's cultural. The problem is, if it's cultural, it is now Islamic, according to this maxim. And this is taken from a list. You can go to any number of Islamic texts that provide references to this. Cultural usage has the weight of law. If it's in the culture, now let's go have a look at how this is practiced. Okay, so let me go here and I will show you. Now, please close your eyes. Okay, so if you have kids in the room, please close your eyes. Please close their eyes. And if you're sensitive, you're not going to like this. So this book, so this one is called Islamic Homosexualities. Okay, and so let's just jump ahead. It's called, and that's a little boy on the cover. That's a nice, good-looking young man on the cover there. And let's go have a look here. Yeah, I don't have to explain what you're seeing, right? We're all adults here. Okay, so you'll see, and you'll notice this happening. Okay, and you can see there's this, everyone thinks this is just grand, what's going on there. And you'll see here, Thaddeus, if you want to read that.
I don't want to, but I will. Lining up to use a boy. It's the name of the painting.
Yeah, and this is in Turkey. This is a painting from Turkey. This is part of the culture of Turkey. So if someone says Bachabazi is cultural, it's not Islamic, well, because it's cultural, it is Islamic. And this goes back to even the Ottoman Empire. It's legal. So, yeah, just thought I should share that with you. So, yeah, I will stop sharing at this point, but yeah.
And you also have to understand how this worked. It wasn't that the idea of homosexuality is a Western cultural concept. Homosexuality, as we know it today, it was made up very recently. It's a recent invention. In the cultural context of Islam, what you had is the usage of boys who are either poor and low class and are compensated in some way, or are slaves and have no options. A lot of modern homosexual practices are enabled by a modern technology that mitigates a lot of very terrible physical damage that is normative to that kind of usage as it was practiced in the past. So there's a lot more that can be said about that, but the idea that this is something that's just in Afghanistan too is not at all true. In fact, the depraved people of Europe could not get this in Europe. So the first sexual destination for sexual exploitative tourism was in Morocco, particularly Marrakesh, where you could go and rent a hotel room and a boy. We're talking about things on the level of Roman sexual slavery that was completely and utterly normalized and was integrated into the culture at a very, very high level. And this is completely tied up in slavery and how slaves were treated and how slaves were viewed as well. Kind of in the same way that in Rome, it was illegal to do this to anyone but a slave. In pre-Christian Rome, this was something that if you're really depraved, you can go do that with a slave. Well, it was the same thing in Islam, and it was still absolutely allowed. It still is absolutely allowed. The more traditional the culture, the more that this happens. So, Safraz is such a comic. No, Safraz, you don't believe in a God at all. It's so funny that one of the things that I've been saying for a number of months now, and Muslims have been picking this up and repeating it to me as if this is like okay, because it is so true and it makes so much sense in the Islamic system that there is no right or wrong per se in an Islamic framework. There is halal, haram, right? And more than that, what is halal and what is haram is not based upon some sort of abstract right and wrong. It's whatever Allah has given you, that's what you can do. It is a board game with certain rules, and if you win the game by playing the rules, then you get rewarded with all the stuff before that you couldn't do, and that's your reward. So now that you have beat the game, now you get the prize. And the prize is the stuff before. It was so funny because I forgot who it was. I was
Maybe Haja has something to add. It'll be interesting if as
No.
an ex-Muslim, if she has comment on
Yes.
that.
Go ahead.
Yes, I was
Of
going to
course.
bring her in when Mary came to a stop.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
trying to take all these things.
Yeah, so we've been talking kind of on we've pointed to some specific examples, but we've been kind of talking more on a theoretical level. And I wanted to bring you in, Haja, to talk about your own experience here. You were raped by a Islamic teacher as a young teenager, about 13, 14, something like that. And you eventually did tell your parents about it. And what did they say about this?
Well, I was 12.
12.
Um, so first, before I get there, the hypocrisy of Islam is unreal, because all of these things that we're talking about here is concealed. It's behind a veil. It's not talked about. But they use these things, this darkness, to say that, oh, Islam does not have anything of such. It doesn't have homosexuality, it doesn't have any of those rapes. That's why the West come to Islam, because Islam is a peaceful religion, and they use this to preach and get Americans, Westerners into Islam. But yes, I was 12 years old, and the weird thing is, while this was happening, he used the Quran. And too much information, but he took a red ribbon type of, as small, I would say a red thread, and tied it around his penis before he raped me. Till this day, I am researching everywhere to try to find out what is the purpose of that. And then when I told my parents this, they don't want to talk about it. First of all, it is haram to talk about because he is a teacher. Second of all, it's going to bring shame to the family. And the highest of all, it is going to bring shame to Islam. So you're not to talk about it. You just need to be quiet and keep it moving. And again, if you talk about it and people hear about it, they're gonna blame the girl. They're gonna blame me. They're gonna blame me. They're going to call me all type of names, like it's my fault. And you looking at this 60-year-old man, 15, 60-year-old man sitting there touching little girls, but it's concealed, all in the name of Islam. The difference is, here in the West, at least, people report. Some people report, not everybody, but the majority of people do talk about it. It's not concealed by Christianity. It's not a taboo. But in the Islamic world, it is a taboo. And the girl, I felt shamed, and that will lead you into depression, because you are there dealing with this, and you have to see this man. You have to see this man every day of your life. And he looks you in your eyes, and you can't talk about him.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's, not that it's better when it's a stranger, but when a stranger rapes you, you don't have to face them again. When your teacher rapes you, you have to see them again and again and again.
Nisar Khan just mentioned over 300,000 kids raped and abused by 3,000 priests and nuns in French churches, and you're talking about Islam. Now, those are crimes. In Western law, in Christianity, that's a sin. And in Western law, those are crimes. People are charged and prosecuted as criminals for that. They go to jail. In Islam, it's legal. In Islam, it is not a crime. It is legal. Pedophilia is perfectly normal. A man can have sex with a 3-year-old, 2-year-old, 6-month-old, 5-month-old girl. It is perfectly legal in Islamic law, and we can cover that. And so yeah, I understand. That's being hypocritical. If I may briefly show something here.
Before you do that, I want to correct Nassar here. So to be a hypocrite is to say one behavior is acceptable for one group and not acceptable for another. So you are actually being the hypocrite here, because you're coming in with this greatly exaggerated number, by the way, saying that this number of rapes occurred in French churches, and that was obviously wrong. So, or you wouldn't be bringing it up, right? We agree that's completely wrong. Whatever number were raped by priests and nuns in French churches, whatever number it was, even if it was one person, that would be very wrong. You, however, are not willing to say that when the same behavior happens in Islam, that it's wrong. You don't want us to talk about it. We're perfectly fine condemning any priest, any nun, any person whatsoever who abused a child, whether they claim to be part of the church or not. You are only willing to talk about it when it's someone outside of Islam. That is hypocrisy.
Yeah, they can talk about it because it's, you know what, it's the Quran, and it's designed and written by a man for himself. Everything is to please him. So again, everything just revolves around sex and children. So I think what we're trying to say is stop painting Islam as the religion of peace, because it is not. Let's face the facts. You face the facts. This is Islam, and this is what's happening in Islam. And if you choose to stay there, it's your own problem. But at least do not sit there and lie to people that, like, there is not rape, there is not I don't even want to say the word. I don't want to say the word. But look at that picture that Lloyd just showed. Going back and what they're doing to those little boys. You can't talk about that. And that's something that needs to talked about, because it's happening today. It's still happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So follow up from Nassar, your Pope and that Satanic Vatican made it illegal to abuse kids. Nassar, I don't want to hear another comment from you until you provide a reference where the Vatican said this was okay. We are providing references from the Sharia that explain the behavior in Islam. Please provide a reference published by the Vatican or get lost.
Maybe he's one of them. This type of people. Seriously.
Yeah.
Maybe.
If I can show something from the tafsir and then jump across this. Sorry, this is Quran. This is Quran 68:1. Right, Quran 68:1. Listen here. O Allah, no matter how sinful we are, you are forgiving. And no matter how ugly our deeds, you are the concealer. O King, you have the treasure of bounty without equal help. It is worthy that you pass over our disloyal acts. So in other words, Allah just ignores their crimes. So Allah conceals. Allah is the concealer. See, so this is already embedded. The understanding of the Islamic scholars, considering the pen. This is the pen that that writes the acts of man, right? So already Allah is the concealer. But also notice, no matter how sinful we are forgiving. Now Muslims will constantly say, "Oh, you just go to the priest and he forgives you." Well, according to them, everything is forgiven in Islam, and everything is what isn't forgiven is concealed. But no matter how sinful you are forgiving, so they just so they don't look at themselves in terms of that they are guilty of the same things they accuse us of, right? And then, of course, I mean, for instance, I have been through Islamic law many times, right? And of course, this person needs to understand this is an Islamic law text. So in Islam, within Pakistan, for instance, these are the 4 major Islamic law manuals, Sharia law manuals, that are used in the courts in Pakistan today. Right, the Hidayah is the first, and the Digest of Muhammadan Law second. This is from 2 PhD legal professors in Pakistan that wrote about this, that the Islamic courts do use Sharia law. Not while only under Caliphate will you have 100% Sharia. Right now they've got some Sharia. And let's have a look. This is the second most popular Sharia law manual, and I've read this before. Notice when a man has had sexual intercourse with a girl under the age of 9 years, and he has ruptured the parts, in other words, he has torn her vagina open down to the anus, he has ripped the skin, it is unlawful for him to have further connection with her, in other words, further sex with her, but she is not released from her ties if connected with him by marriage or slavery. If no rupture has taken place, the prohibition is not incurred, according to the most valid opinion. So this is law. This is actual law in Pakistan. So if our friend here can provide us this Vatican law, which does not legislate civil law, that is canon law, just for the church, just for its members, that is not civil law. So understand, but notice slavery. In other words, if he has a 3-year-old, 2-year-old, 1-year-old, 6-month-old slave, that man can rape that slave. If he has a 2-year-old, 1-year-old, 6-month-old wife, he can have sex with her. This is Islamic law, and I've gone through many examples of this in the past. So Safraz wants to, he needs to provide more facts and details, how they define rape and all those things. But understand, this is something that they do not want to deal with. Safraz, you need to explain how this is in Islamic law. I'll stop sharing that. Yeah.
Yep, so this is the comment by Safraz. Rape or abuse of women or a child in Saudi, Dubai, Qatar, UAE is straight up death sentences against Islam. Safraz, show me, before we go any further, I just want you to show me the law that defines what rape is. Because as far as I know, there's no law that even defines what rape is.
Yeah, we can actually go and look at the Sharia, and we can look at, because really it falls under adultery. I mean, rape just kind of falls under adultery.
Exactly.
It's very vague.
And he's right. The death penalty is applied, or at least in theory applied to adultery, therefore also rape. But hold on a second. That means the woman who is the victim of the rape is also under the death sentence.
Yeah, there are provisions in the Sharia for those who are not willing participants in the illegal sexual intercourse are not themselves liable to punishment. So there is that provision, but you have to have your 4 witnesses, otherwise you're a false accuser. And the 4 witnesses must see the actual act according to Muhammad himself. If they do not see the act in the most graphic detail possible, then you are you're making a false claim against someone, but you have confessed yourself to illegal sexual intercourse. And here's the thing, because you have confessed to it, you go to jail, but the person you accused does not, because they have not confessed to illegal sexual intercourse. And so their sins have been concealed by Allah because they don't have the 4 witnesses. So Allah has been on their side all along and isn't holding them guilty in that way.
But don't forget, they're allowed to lie to save their honor. In fact, it's obligatory for them to lie to save their honor.
And let's also talk about whether or not this is embedded in what Islam teaches. I have something on my screen right now. If you'll share, go back to sharing again. So there's a very simple way of telling whether or not, I need a plus again.
Yeah,
sorry
make
about that, guys. There's a very, very simple way to know whether or not something is truly taught in Islam by seeing what happens when a whole bunch of people who say that they are Muslim and according to Islam are in fact Muslim come into a country, what happens to the rapes in that country. If it's just the occasional bad Muslim who does this, the occasional corrupt person, then you would expect overall crimes to go down because all of these wonderful, peaceful people are coming into a country. And rapes especially, because Muslims are so moral and they care so much about moral character, then rape rates ought to plummet when tons of Muslim men come into a country. But instead, what we find is that rape rates skyrocket because Islam tells men to treat women like this. And if you don't get caught, it's because you weren't supposed to. And if you want to rape her, it's because she is tempting you. And all of the zina that you commit, all of your illegal sexual intercourse was already decreed to you by Allah before you were born. There's a specific hadith, not just that everything that you do is going to be Every sin that you commit has been decreed by Allah. That is also must be believed by Muslims, that everything you do, good or bad, has been decreed by Allah, and nothing that happens is not part of His decree. And His decree, they mean His explicit decree. So, she wrote that a while ago, or he, sorry, I haven't actually watched the channel, so I don't know he or she. But so if I become a killer, did Allah write that for me? That's absolutely true. Allah did write that for you before you were even created, that you would kill, and you were created to kill. But it's more than that, is that on sexual misconduct, zina, there is a hadith that specifically says that every type of sexual misconduct was decreed for you. Everyone is decreed their portion of zina before they are born.
Yeah.
And it says, the zina of the eyes, the zina of the thoughts, and the zina of the body, all of that was already decreed for you. So whatever you do, it's because Allah decreed it. So Allah decreed for you to look at that woman and want to have sex with her, or that child. And when you do it, it's because Allah decreed it, but it's okay because He's the concealer and you're a good Muslim, right?
Yeah,
And
I'm going to say something.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Absolutely.
I want to say something about what Sister Mary just said. This happens in my country too many times. And it says, this is the word they use because Allah has already decreed it for you, is Allah Dali. So Allah Dali means, to us that Allah has already written this for you, so you cannot fight it. If someone's raping you at that moment, you got to lay down and let the person finish because it's already written for you. And you know what? And think about this. They just go ahead and they also cover the women. Not even covering the women helps the women not to be raped by this Muslim man. You know what? There is a sexual problem in the Islamic religion. There is a literal sexual problem because they cover the women just because maybe that can help a little bit, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help because on earth and in heaven, when they go to heaven, it's sex. On earth is sex. They cannot help themselves. Why? Because of this book. Because that's how their prophet was. Now, if you read the word of Allah, it's not the word of Allah. It's the word of Muhammad, because he is just telling us that this is what Allah said to him. So it's not the word of Allah. It's Muhammad. And most of these laws is to cover his sins.
In Islamic law, Muhammad is equivalent with Allah. In fact, they are, according to Islamic law, synonymous. They're the same. They speak with the same authority, which is shirk. But Muhammad has exactly the same authority as Allah within Islamic law.
Yeah, he wrote it. He wrote it. He wrote it. It's his thoughts. It's his ideas. And some of them is copy-paste, but also misunderstood.
Also, he allowed his men to rape slaves. And
the
women
hadith,
have no lives in Islam.
The hadith on that subject are pretty repulsive. The men come to Muhammad and they're like, yeah, we really, really want to have sex with these women we've captured, but we're afraid that we'll get them pregnant and reduce their value. And Muhammad's like, nah, go ahead. If Allah wants them to get pregnant, they'll get pregnant. If He doesn't want them to get pregnant, they won't. So no worries. He doesn't say, perfect opportunity for him to say, what are you doing? You can't have sex with these women. That's rape. No. Muhammad says, no, guys, don't worry. The men have at least some sense of decency, and they come to Muhammad. He's like, don't worry, just have sex with them. It's fine. And he said, but don't pull out, because Allah doesn't like that.
Yeah.
You're on mute, Mary. Mary, you're on mute. Probably she can't hear me either. So she's talking. She's talking. We can't hear her, and she can't hear us either. Lovely. So Veronica said,
Oh,
so
sorry.
Allah is a pervert. Well, Allah is a pervert, or maybe Muhammad's a pervert, but either
Yes.
way.
So in that particular story too, he didn't just say, "Don't pull out." He actually said, pulling out, it would not do anything anyway. It's kind of disliked. So it's not forbidden still. Because what the men really wanted was a greater market price for these women, or ransom price if they ransom them back to their husbands. So they wanted to rape them, but then either sell them on a market, or to after selling them on the market, or to ransom them back to their families. But their families wouldn't, a lot of times, wouldn't take them if they came back pregnant, or they might, the whole pregnancy thing puts a kink in their monetary schemes. And so because they really, really wanted, to get the top dollar, but Muhammad was aping the Jews all the time. Anything the Jews did, he either condemned it or imitated it. And the Jews, and the Christians both, condemned pulling out, because that means that you're only having sex for pleasure alone. And unless you have a really good medical reason not to get pregnant, the idea that since the purpose of marriage is supposed to be procreation, and you're supposed to have intercourse only in marriage, that you shouldn't be doing this, and this is a sinful activity because it's only satisfying the flesh, unless you have a good reason that you should not get pregnant. It was just be too dangerous for a woman's health, or absolutely cannot support someone, your children financially, something like that would be considered to be a good reason. But at that time, it was condemned by both Jews and Christians. And so Muhammad wanted to condemn it too. But he settled on, well, Allah will make whoever's born who's supposed to be born. It's not great to do that because you're thinking like you can trick Allah. But he wouldn't say that just gratifying your lust on the flesh of women who are your captives, who are married, who are being raped, that's wrong. Nothing in that category is wrong. The only thing that's wrong is thinking that you might outsmart Allah and not have a baby that Allah has decreed will be born.
Can I mention something?
Real quick,
I'll share my screen. Okay, I just shared my screen. So this is from a paper by this guy. As you can see, he's clearly a Muslim, and this was his PhD thesis on Islamic law and society, status distinction and sartorial differences, slavery, sexual ethics, and the social logic of veiling in Islam. And we do learn from this paper that if I just lost my place, but just find it again. Sorry about that.
So you're finding that Dash gave a super sticker, so thank you very much for that. I've also saved a number of comments throughout that we'll try to bring up as time allows. Chat's very active today. Thank you for participating, and we'll get to as many of your comments as I can.
So within Islamic law, according to the scholar that this man is quoting here, so we are informed that a woman's sexuality is a commodity subject to sale and purchase. So understand that when you get married in Islam, there is a contract of sale that occurs. Mm-hmm. And it effectively is a transaction. It's like buying goods.
Yeah.
So it is not something that is holy matrimony as in a divinely decreed holy act. It's simply I've given you money, hand it over. That's really what it comes down to. And notice that I'll go through just this, which is kind of this is an oddity here, but notice there are numerous reports like this. Anas bin Malik said, Umar's slave women used to serve us with their heads uncovered and their breasts knocking together and their ankles exposed. You can find numerous references like this. This is not just the only one. But notice, they used to have the slave women deliberately half naked. The women would be beaten. Don't forget, the slave women would be beaten if they covered up. So they were allowed to cover between hips and knees. They were not allowed to cover hips upwards or knees downwards. They had to expose the lower legs and their breasts. So this is how Islam viewed women. Haja, you want to add something? I'll just stop sharing here.
Going on what Lloyd just said is, unfortunately, it is so true because I've been through it. So in Islam, when someone is getting married, they have to pay your dowry, which is if it's a cow, a goat, or money, however the person can afford. So pretty much it's still slavery. You are purchasing a human being. And in most Islamic marriages, they treat the women like rubbish. And they marry as many women as they can. Because my dad had 6 wives. So in my own case, when I was married to a Muslim man, they paid a dowry for me. And it was $500. Okay? $500. $500 was my worth. It's sad.
Yeah, and that's also really important in Islam. The low value of women is in what Muhammad taught. He taught that you shouldn't pay much to the dowry. So in Jewish society, the dowry was that which the woman would be supported if her husband died or divorced her, whatever. She'd have this support forever, right? And it was supposed to help her and support her. But Muhammad said that you marry, if only with an iron ring, right? And don't pay much money for women. So that would mean that that your dowry was an iron ring. If you got divorced, then you'd be thrown out on the street with an iron ring to support you for the rest
You
of
have
your
to
life.
give it back.
Well, a lot of times, if you wanted to be divorced, but if your husband kicks you out, if your husband kicks you out and he chooses to divorce you, then he's supposed to give you that dowry. But he was supposed to marry you with very little. Muhammad bragged about how the most that he ever paid for anyone was for Khadijah, the 5 camels. That's the most he gave to anyone. And none of his other wives did he give this much to. And because Muhammad is a perfect example, then by extension, you ought to be paying very little money for your wives because they're so worthless, essentially.
Again, women in Islam, like literally everywhere you turn around, women are being oppressed. It's from the time that they were a baby, they're being groomed and prepared for a man. And you go through all of these things in life just so you can be perfect for the man. This even includes FGM is for the man. What is it in Islam that is beneficial to women?
Actually, I can kind of tell you how much camels are worth. This is kind of funny. Camels, I know this is like off topic, but I actually read a book describing Bedouin and Bedouin wealth. And it said that no man was considered wealthy who did not have at least 50 camels and a ton of other stuff if they lived in, or even considered like kind of decently off, like respectably off. If they lived in the richer areas of Arabia, which does not include the Hijaz, but if you lived in the Hijaz, then like the level for not being of the poor class, being of the kind of decent class was like 15 or 20 camels. So 5 camels would put you in the rank of the very poor, but not quite totally camelist poor. So it's not that much of a gift as it was, of course, because Muhammad had no money. It was what he could scrape together and not be utterly shameful. So it was not a large dowry according to the times. It was kind of it was barely above shame level for Khadijah, and his whole family like pitched together to provide him with enough for dowry, and he eventually paid it back. But that's the way it really, that's kind of how low that if Muhammad gives this much, then you must give less, right? Or at least no more than that. And talking about how little people should pay is there because, again, that lets men have sex with women with fewer strings. Anything that took away strings and made it easier for men to have sex legally, that was good in Muhammad's eyes because it meant that his warriors were happy because they were getting lots of sex, and he wasn't losing any warriors going off to have sex and other conditions and things. So yeah, the value of a woman is very low, and the idea that everything is done for the men is absolutely true. One of the things, it is absolutely true that none of the slaves were legally allowed to be covered up in Muhammad's time. That's one thing ISIS did wrong. It's one of the only things that they did wrong. Their rape slaves had to wear the whole niqab, right? But the rape slaves of Muhammad would have been, at best, their hair and face uncovered, but most likely most slaves were kept in a condition of continuous humiliation and exploitation. They were topless. The toplessness of slaves was normalized, both in Arabia, the treatment of low castes, and it's the same reason that people who are in India, the low castes, when Westerners came, they were not allowed to cover up because it was a humiliation for the women to have to walk around with their breasts bare for every man to look at. And it's not breast bare for breastfeeding. That was pretty normalized in a lot of areas, if you weren't in certain groups, but rather that you were to always be exposed to the gaze of men in a kind of humiliation. And you could go all the way back to Assyria and find out about laws about if slave women wore a head covering, she would be put to death under Assyrian law, because it's all about the status and the exposure and the concealing of some and exposing of others. So yeah, it was an incredibly lustful and sex-filled society. And the idea of calling what is called marriage, well, it isn't even called marriage. It's called nikah, which means intercourse. It doesn't even mean marriage. But legal intercourse in Islam, just calling that marriage at all, it makes it a farce, because you have misyar nikah, which means that you're a traveler marriage. So you have like this part-time wife.
Yeah.
And you also have, you have the muta marriage, which isn't allowed in Sunni Islam anymore. It's still allowed in Shia, but Shia have misyar. How is misyar different from than your pleasure marriage? It's just another way of categorizing lustful activities of men as something that's okay to do. It's ridiculous.
You can marry a woman for one night as long as you pay for her, and if you have sex with a woman, you can just give her money once you pay her, and Allah forgives you.
Comment along those lines from Hope Seeker True. There is no marriage in Islam. There's prostitution with benefits. Women are either temporary prostitute or the exclusive prostitute called the wife. That is why they cannot say no to sex.
See what TRS cartoons. He says, yes, I am fine with child marriage, which means he is fine with child sex. All right. So notice what he states there. Just, yes, I'm fine with child marriage means he quite literally supports sex with children. And remember, there is no legal lower age limit in Islam.
Yes,
a man can have sex with a girl of any age. She could be a month old.
He's probably married to a child right now.
This TRS clown has not condemned a single thing that we've said. The only thing he has condemned is us for supposedly not being good Christians, for not supporting child marriage, for insisting that rape is bad, and so forth.
Thaddeus, for this type of person, this cartoon guy, whatever he is people like this, you don't even respond to them, because you can see the type of heart that they have. And they're like a direct descendant of Muhammad. So I wouldn't even waste my time with
But
we're
they
right like
cannot
that.
condemn
Definitely.
Islam. They cannot
They
condemn
can't.
Islam because that is illegal. It's illegal for them to condemn Islam. That is treason. That is ridda. It's apostasy, and it's the death penalty. They cannot call Islam less than perfect. So there's, don't forget, in Islamic, once you're married to the girl, you may have sex with her, and there is no lower age limit. This is perfect. I mean, I've shown this over and over, and it's pretty disgusting to read. And yeah, and he supports this, and we are wrong. We are sinning because we are criticizing Islam. You know,
And
like if this was under Sharia law, we would be treated like Salman Rushdie was recently.
yeah,
Another comment along those lines, built for speed. Women in Islam are sex slaves on earth and in Jannah. Muhammad's perverted ideological perspective on women is horrible. So his logic is also horrible because he said most of the inhabitants of hell are women, but then he also said that the Jewish and Christian women would be taken out of hell and given to men as wives or whatever in paradise. So it seems that if you're a woman and you're a Jew or a Christian, you got a better chance of getting to Jannah than if you're a Muslim, according to Islam. Because somehow the majority of the inhabitants of hell are women, even though all the Jewish and Christian women are being taken out to be given as sex slaves to the Muslim men. Amazing stuff.
everything
Well, it also says,
is sex.
Yeah, that one's particularly funny because it says that, of course, then their front passages are attractive, by the way. Muhammad makes sure to let everyone know that the Jewish and Christian women are going to be given beautiful front passages for the enjoyment. But that particular one
No,
says
thank
that
you.
there are going to be 50 wives, or wait, no, 70 wives from among the people of the hellfire, the Jews and the Christians specifically. But he also says again and again that a minority of the people who earn their own way are going to be Muslim women. So that means that more than 50 times as many Jews and Christians will make it, Jewish women and Christian women will make it to Jannah than Muslim women, according to this math.
well, if you consider 72 out of every 73 Muslims will not go to paradise. Right, because remember you said Islam will split into 73 sects, and 72 of those sects will go to hell. So only 1 out of 73. If you do the maths on that, that means that 98.63% of Muslims are going to hell.
Well, that's just the men, and then the women are going to be even more. So,
so literally only 1.37% of Muslims will go to paradise. 98.63% are going to hell.
It's like. And of course, Haja, what do women get in Jannah? What is our reward supposed to be? What is our great, wonderful thing that we get to do for the rest of eternity?
My dear, is to please men. But let me tell you something. It's like you just take a look at the pattern, of Islam, of women in Islam. Let's just take a look at the pattern. Just mention a couple of them. We don't even have to mention all of it. Okay, some women are betrothed when they were a baby. By 10, you are married. You having a baby. A baby is having a baby. Not to talk about it, but before you go into that, they perform FGM on you, and then some of these girls are sewn together so that they cannot have sexual intercourse, so that they will maintain their virginity until they get married. Again, to please a man, you are willing to perform FGM on your kid, sew them together, and wait for the day that the old man comes to marry them. And then again, go back and undo what you've done to please them. And then your husband go ahead and marry someone else. You share it's like a 4, 5, 6 sum, 10 sum. They go ahead and marry multiple women, and you sharing your husband with multiple women, your bed, your matrimonial bed. You just think about all the infection that goes around. and you have zero respect in some countries, especially in Africa. If you don't have a son, you have a daughter, you have zero respect. And then you die. You
Yeah.
go to hell. And then they take you back up. It's I can't.
Yeah. And what happens if you happen to die while your husband is angry at you? What is your guaranteed result? If your if your Muslim husband happens to be angry at you at the moment you die, what happens to you?
Oh my goodness. No, you don't stand a chance.
No, you don't, because the angels are cursing you anytime
Yeah.
that your husband's angry at you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just annoyed him for whatever reason, there's no
Mm-hmm.
why, right? Your
No.
husband's annoyed at you, the angels are cursing you, period.
And then you don't get the privilege to be taken
Mhm.
back to
Right.
cleaning you up for like a sex party.
And
You
if
just
you
get to stay
refuse,
in hell.
and if you refuse sex for any reason that's not a good Muslim reason, meaning that like you weren't in the middle of your menses, right? If you
Yeah.
refuse sex for any time from there until
Yeah.
sun up the next day, the angels also curse you. So,
Yes.
you don't feel good. You're really nauseated. You ate
Mm-hmm.
something wrong. Your husband wants to have sex with you. That is not a
Yeah.
valid Islamic reason because it's still halal. It is
Yeah.
not haram if the
Mm-hmm.
reason that you want to not have sex is because you're sick to your stomach. So that sickness, your husband wants to have sex with you, right? And you're
Mm-hmm.
really sick to your stomach, so you say no. You're being cursed by angels to mourning. Well, it turns out you got super, super sick and you died that night. Guess what? You go to hell. You go
That's
to hell
actually
because
there's
of
a
the stomach bug.
hadith. This you I'm sorry, sister. It's like, what can we do? This is like ludicrous. This is crazy. And Allah supposedly gave you these, menstrual cycles, but if you can't pray, you can't talk to him, you can't go to the mosque. You not, like, let's imagine this. You are in the middle of crisis and you are in your menstrual period and you want to pray. You cannot pray to him because he's not going to listen to your prayers. But he made you, he gave you those, but yet he's going to send you to hell because of the same things that he gave you. You remember, Allah decreed.
Absolutely. And that particularly, if you go to Al-Tabari, you'll find that in his history, he talks about the different ahadith that Muhammad was telling about how Adam and Eve in the garden. And Muhammad specifically said that, so in their Adam and Eve story, only Eve gets cursed. Eve and the snake get cursed. Adam gets no curse. There's no curse for him. He didn't do anything wrong. He was just tricked. He was a poor victim of this stupid, awful woman who was, according to the ahadith, created messed up in the first place. It says that the reason that women are the way they are is because they were created from a rib, and a rib is crooked. So they're crooked because Allah screwed up and made her from a rib, made her crooked. And it's especially crooked at the top part. So that means that her brain is especially crooked. And that's before the fall, right? So that's the whole reason that Eve did this. And according to Muhammad, the reason that women are both stupid and that they are that they bleed is because apparently he thought that when Eve took the fruit, she made the tree bleed, and so the woman bleeds now, right? And so that's a curse, and now you all get to go to hell because of Eve's sin. So that's preventing you from praying now, and you deserve it because of what Eve did. So, and there are a hadith that says that her prayers do not rise beyond her ears, meaning that Allah cannot even hear them if you are praying while menstruating. And there are cases where you can't recite the Quran while you're menstruating either. And all of these different they're all magic spells in Islam. So if you recite a particular surah, you get like all these benefits from the surah, right? Each surah has its own magic associated with it. But you can't practice Quranic recitation when you're menstruating either. So it's harder to memorize because there are certain days where you can't even practice it. So you can't say it on the other days because it's harder for you to memorize physically. You were also talking about circumcision. If you'll share my screen again, Um, a lot of Muslims say that this is not part of Islam, but it
It is.
absolutely is.
It is.
This is not just a cultural thing. Muhammad assumed that women would be circumcised. He said to Umar used to say that when the circumcised part passes the circumcised part, the ritual cleaning after sex is obligatory. So it's saying what sex acts require you to do a ritual cleaning. So when the two circumcised parts meet, then the bath is obligatory. That's what Muhammad taught, the meeting of the circumcised parts. So he said this explicitly. When the two circumcised parts meet and so, the bath is necessary. So this is part of Islam to the extent that it is obligatory for women to be circumcised in two of the four schools of fiqh. It's absolutely obligatory, and the other two, it's considered oh gosh, what's it
Sunnah
called?
and a courtesy.
Thank you, exactly.
Yep. So Lloyd has to go shortly, but I did want to give him a chance to share any what the Sharia tells us about female circumcision, or what we would call FGM.
It does state that circumcision is obligatory. Now, unfortunately, let me share this so that everyone can see this. So, circumcision is obligatory for both men and women. Both must be circumcised. Now, I have no idea why you would need to circumcise a woman. There is no need for this. Now, notice he does lie here. So for men, it consists of removing the prepuce from the, and for women, removing the prepuce, right? And he says here, now this, Adam Seeker has gone over this section in the past, as have others. He says here, in Arabic, the bazr of the clitoris, not the clitoris itself, as some mistakenly assert. This, however, apparently differs from the Arabic text, and this is not what is stated here versus what is stated here. So while they say here for a Western audience this is whitewashed, from an Islamic point of view, they do remove the clitoris. So it's not just that, but it is obligatory for both men and women in both cases. So it's not a cultural practice. Remember, if it's cultural, it is Islamic. If it's cultural, it's legal. Whatever was cultural was absorbed into Islam and became law. So bachabazi is legal in Islam. Diddling little boys is normal. It's lawful. So yeah, hopefully that clarifies and provides some insight there. But notice it says the Hanbalis hold it, it's not obligatory, but sunnah. Yeah, well, maybe, right? But the Hanbalis are generally a minority, and the Hanafis consider it a mere courtesy to the husband. I would take all of this with a grain of salt, because not everything written here is true, because he has, let's just say they've whitewashed certain things to make it more palatable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a hadith. I cannot share my my screen, but hadith 43499. Look at this. A woman used to perform circumcision in Medina. The Prophet said to her, "Do not cut severely, as that is better for a woman and more desirable for a husband." This is the hadith. And this is the word of Muhammad.
It's all about the husband.
It's all about the husband, and they don't care about the consequences and the psychological issues and the trauma that these women go through, because it plays on every area of your life. Once that happens to you, it will take a miracle for you to recover.
And you are speaking from personal experience here.
Yes. So I'm one of them, and it's a painful, not only inhumane and painful procedures. They use knives, they use blades, they use scissors. I mean, machetes, all type of things that can cut. unsanitized, and you lay your little girl on that table and you cut her for a man. And these girls, some of them, they get HIV from these things, all type of infections. And then during,
Oh, wait, so please just stop there,
go
if I
ahead.
may. Sorry to interrupt you.
Mhm.
TRS Cartoons, the pedophile, TRS
Mhm.
Cartoons has said he's against FGM. However, he is obviously for child sex. He just says it is not rape if the child consents. I mean, I think he should be banned for that. So,
Yeah, I think
I mean, this
it
is
should be
disgusting. If the
like,
child consents, and when he says child, remember, you can literally do a month-old baby. This is legal in Islam. He is saying that month-old child, that 2-month-old child, that 6-month-old child has consented.
Yes,
I think he's just
because
a distraction. I think he wants to distract us. Like literally, he's just a
But
distraction. It's sickening.
yeah, but this is what he believes.
yeah, I mean we have
And
it from his
also,
own words.
I worry
yeah,
for his
here's
wife,
a
for
question
his
for
children.
Lloyd. Lloyd, is there such a thing as consent for girls under the age of 9? Are they consulted about their marriage, and do they have the ability to consent to it? Um, and then also another question: is there any consent required or needed or given at all within marriage? If a man wants to have sex with his wife, is there any need for consent?
No, no, she is
No.
not allowed to say no. There's no need for consent. So he can. So the what we would term marital rape is perfectly legal. She does not have any right to say no, and prior to the age of 9, she has no say in the matter. If I remember the law correctly, prior to 9, she has no say whatsoever in the matter. Oh no. Once she reaches the age of 9, sorry, she has no say in if her guardian decides to marry her off. She has no say. And once she's married, she has no right to refuse. She can be beaten for that. She is then a bad wife.
Yeah, the quote consent, the thing is, if you have reached 9, technically there is a consent of your silence. But if you arrange your own marriage, Muhammad said if you are a virgin who hasn't been married and divorced before, because these women were divorced and thrown away like trash constantly. When they were young and hot, they got to marry the richer men, and then when the richer men got tired of them, they threw them away, and then they married poorer men. And then they worked their way down the social ladder as they aged out, became too damaged or fat or whatever, for men to find them as desirable to support as they had. So at the point when you're arranging your first of very often many marriages, you were not allowed to arrange your own marriage whatsoever, or you're considered a prostitute. A prostitute is the woman who arranges their own marriage, according to Muhammad. And if you are a good daughter, then you'll say yes. And your silence is your consent if you are a virgin over 9. If you're under 9, then there is no consent at all, period, paragraph, the end. Your father's made the decision and you belong to him. There's not even a necessary for silence. Although, if you have watched documentaries about arranged marriages in Bangladesh, silence looks an awful like screaming and crying
Yeah,
with
but
these
also the
girls who are
guardian.
14 to 18 getting married
They are
off.
A guardian may compel the female charge to marry someone. This is also legal. So a guardian can overrule that. So it says that section M3.13 within the Reliance. Guardians are of 2 types: those who may compel their female charges to marry someone, and those who may not. So it is possible for them to overrule and simply compel them. So they can compel, meaning to marry her to a suitable match without her consent. I can show this. So maybe I should just show it so everyone has seen it.
Yep.
Okay, so guardians who may marry a virgin to a man without her consent, right? So the guardians are 2 types: who may compel the female charges to marry someone, and compel meaning they can force her to marry a match without her consent. So her father can overrule her wishes. So hopefully that's clear.
So
in most Islamic world, in most Islamic countries, the girl have no say in the marriage. It's usually the parents that just arranges everything.
yeah, according to that, her biological father, as long as she's a virgin, i.e., it's her first marriage, or her biological grandfather can both compel her.
Yeah, there are slight differences according to different madhabs, but in effect, in the real world, because there is one hadith where a woman was going to be compelled by her father, but she didn't want to marry someone, and Muhammad said for her, she didn't have to get married to him. But in the real world, it doesn't really matter what madhab you belong to. If your father decides you're going to marry so-and-so, you're going to. That's why they have, the documentaries
as long as it's legal in one of the
Bangladeshis.
madhabs, as long as one of the madhab has made it legal, then it's okay. It doesn't matter if it's like, as long as somewhere it's been made legal within that corpus of sharia text, it's fine. And also there are exceptions. Remember, in Islamic law, there are exceptions to every law, and the exceptions are so broad and so varied that they basically make a mockery of the actual law. There's literally not a single law in Islam that doesn't have an exception, a loophole, or something that cancels it. And those the corpus of data, the rulings on the cancellations are far more voluminous than the ones that allow it. So, yeah.
Definitely. So we did have a question, which I assume is a true question.
Sorry to have interrupted you, Hajjah. My apologies. I just thought that was an egregious statement.
No, it's fine.
So Farish asks, what does the female circumcision do or doesn't do? So I assume this is a real question. He actually doesn't know what we're describing.
So, I can answer that for him if he likes.
Sure.
What it does to the benefits for a woman is zero. There's zero benefits. But this, after being circumcised, there's lifetime effects for the women. You have anemia, you become anemic, miscarriage. Women who's been circumcised can easily have miscarriage. I almost lost my children twice. And you have infection, prolonged child labor. It's not the same as a woman who did not go under FGM. Labor is crucial. And then there's depression, there's shame, there's a feeling of unworthiness, there's suicidal, the list is endless. The list is endless when a little girl undergo female genital mutilation. It damages them for a lifetime. And then another thing is that if a girl goes through that, let's just take a look at me. It is the hardest thing for you to have any type of cut in your body. Like, let's say I just got cut here for a little bit and just saw the blood. It takes you back in time. You become insecure about your body, and you have this extreme anger in you, and you are, even when you are married, you remarry again. It is sexual pleasure. You don't feel anything. You don't feel anything. Mm-hmm. You don't even feel the man penetrating. So it is sick. And then just think about a woman, you're married and you're in love with somebody, and then you cannot feel your husband because of what's done to you. Like I said, it takes a miracle, to restore you. And then you have this extreme anger and you feel like every man is against you. And that plays into your relationships. So the list is endless, and it has to be stopped.
Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen here.
I wonder why TRC and Safraz don't show us their Sharia laws and prove us wrong. Why it's always opinion, personal opinion, but never actual references.
That's a good question. So let me make this bigger. This is the World Health Organization. Female genital mutilation involves the partial or total removal of external female genitalia or other injury to the female genital organs for non-medical reasons. The practice has no health benefits for girls and women. FGM can cause severe bleeding and problems urinating and later cysts, infections, as well as complications in childbirth and increased risk of newborn deaths. More than 200 million girls and women alive today have undergone FGM in 30 countries in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia where FGM is practiced. Interesting correlation between the countries where Islam is practiced there. FGM is mostly carried out on young girls between infancy and age 15. FGM is a violation of human rights of girls and women. There's no evidence suggesting greater involvement of healthcare providers in the practice. This is known as medicalization. The WHO is opposed to all types of FGM. So just to put medical professionals behind what Hadja just said there, there are severe health complications, there are severe risks, and there is no benefit whatsoever. And additionally, Thunderous brought this up earlier, and someone else just made a similar comment. In Somalia, it's known for women to sew up the vagina of a child for it to be torn open in the wedding night. So sometimes they go even beyond what is technically FGM, and they sew the woman shut so that it's physically impossible for her to have sex.
Yeah, well, that's actually part of FGM in certain areas. That's the normative practice. So the quote circumcision of women is a very different. The circumcision as practiced by Jews around the time of Jesus and before was an extremely minimal type of practice. Even now, the level of circumcision is quite a bit more for men than it was back then for political reasons that are way beyond here. But it does not cause sexual dysfunction. You are capable of having sexual feeling, sensation. The purpose of female genital mutilation is to remove sexual sensation. That is the purpose. So that is how you are a decent and chaste woman, because they believe that, because Islam believes that women, like men, are such hormonal sex-filled monsters that they can't possibly not have sex with anyone who comes walking by unless they are inhibited such that they cannot derive any sexual satisfaction. The point of female genital mutilation is to make it impossible for women to experience sexual pleasure, and particularly the more extreme forms. That's why there it's claiming that, oh, well, it only cuts a little bit of the clitoral hood. That is very, very rare, that the clitoral hood alone is cut, in spite of that mistranslation. It is almost always a clitorectomy, meaning that the entire clitoris is removed. And very often it is so severe, and that, of course, is close to, your urinary tract. If that becomes scarred and becomes blocked, you die. That was the major cause whenever they created eunuchs. Of eunuchs dying is because a lot of times there'd be issues with urination, and you'd die because your urinary tract would get blocked. Well, you die now if you get scarred up so much that you can't urinate anymore, because a lot of these people are not living in places where they have hospitals that will come in and rush in and prevent this from happening. In addition, that in a lot of cases, they do try to cut a very large amount around, because even though the clitoris is the center of sexual stimulation, there are other parts of your labia minora that do contribute. And so they very often cut off the labia minora. And a lot of times they do also stitch them together, leaving only a pea-sized hole so that menstrual blood can come out, so that a man can be assured that he has bought the first rights to a woman. And on the wedding night, there is scar tissue there. And he
Well,
rips it apart. Now, because the injury to the labia minora is so common, this causes what's called a fistula, which is in childbirth. Whenever you try to give birth, you need stretchy tissue there to pass the very large head of the baby through that part of your body. Instead, you have scar tissue. So a lot of women die and tons of babies die because the baby cannot fit out. And in other times, you have your body tears where it can, because the scar tissue is hard, your perineum is softer, and so it rips through your perineum and causes your vagina and your rectum to become joined, and that's called a fistula. And it can happen internally or externally during childbirth. It's incredibly common in places like Somalia, Ethiopia, and it's horrific. It is absolutely horrific. There is no other words for it. And the purpose is so that women, the chastity of women, because Islam's view of the Islam's view of good Muslim men is that they're so sex crazed that they can't control themselves. Good Muslim women need to have this happen to them because they're so sex crazed that otherwise they can't help themselves, basically. This is what Islam teaches. This is what it breeds.
guys,
Lloyd would like to
off in a
jump
minute.
in here.
Yeah,
So,
I'll get off in a minute, but I just wanted to show something. So this, unfortunately, the reliance, while it is broad, it's not always deep, right? But notice this, we're talking the book, this is the book of marriage. And what we have here is the opening. So this is section M1.1. And a man who needs to marry because of desire for sexual intercourse and has enough money. Not when you fall in love with someone and you feel that this is your partner for life, you need to, it's like, okay, you're horny and you got the money to pay for it, go for it. This is Islamic law, basically. It's recommended. And notice, Muhammad says, marry one another that you may increase. So not that you may, as a woman, have pleasure, but have babies. This is why women are baby machines in the Middle East. But notice it says, if you need to marry because of a desire for sexual intercourse, that's why you marry.
Need to marry because you have sexual desire.
Something's turning blue. I need to pay for it.
Aren't you guys just like looking at it? What is sex in Islam? Like what? like everything is about sex and money. Everything. Like I just, when I got out of Islam and I started doing my research and the things that I found out.
It's horrific.
It's horrific. And some of these girls, talking to Lloyd, what you said, some of these girls go through this cutting multiple times in their life when as a baby, before their first period, when they get married. Because they have to be cut again for the man to enter. Like literally. I worry for, my heart goes out to Muslim women, but their children. This
is barbaric. This is prehistoric behavior. So guys, I need to get out of here. It's been 2 hours, so I need to.
We'll let you go, Lloyd. We'll continue on with some comments from the audience, but thank you very much for joining us today, Lloyd. Bringing in the Sharia makes this, shows that it's not just people doing what they want and ignoring the law. It shows that it's condoned by the law. It's allowed in a sense. All it covers it up. You can't talk about it. So yeah, it's illegal. But you also can't point it out if you're the victim, which means, in effect, there's no real penalty for committing this crime.
Allah, the great concealer, right? The concealer of sins, not the. Yeah, just crazy. Thanks, guys. Hajja, good to meet you. And
Good meet
yeah,
you,
man, that's
brother.
heartbreaking. Till next time, guys. See you
All
soon.
right.
Thank
Take
you.
care. God bless you.
Bye. And one point that Lloyd made that was important is about the variety. As long as one madhab says it, that it is permissible. The picking and choosing from laws is something that is allowed. So if you mostly follow such and such, if you want to follow a different one, there is something called it's considered a mercy in Islam, and I forgot what exactly they call that. There's a technical term for the differences in rulings. That there are certain differences of ruling and opinion and everything else that is considered a mercy. If all the schools agree on something, then that's obligatory and you must follow it. If there's a difference, then the differences are considered a mercy and you can pick and choose. Well, guess who gets to pick and choose? It's the dad. So the dad can always choose to follow, oh, well, I'm now going to follow, sure, we're mostly Hanbali, but now I'm following Reliance of the Traveler because, this is what I want to do. So that is baked into Islam is this ability to pick and choose according to whatever suits you if you are the person in power.
Yeah, whatever suits the man who wrote the book. That's what Islam is all about. And if you're a woman, if I were you, I'll run from that. Like seriously, like your child have no future. You have no future, not on earth, not when you pass.
Yeah, and in the descriptions of Jannah, you find out that women will be wearing niqabs and they will be being only inside. They will not go out to the marketplace. Even in Jannah, you will only live in the tents beside the rivers, which Muhammad somehow thought were like springs, like an oasis came up, and then he thinks it comes out of ground and then goes back underground. So like these oasis tents and in the palaces, and that's the only places they'll be. They're still not allowed to go out. They will never look at another man. They will have a hymen that regrows. The only thing that you get that's supposed to be a benefit is that you're more beautiful than the Horis. You're supposed to be more beautiful than the Horis to the point that the outer lining to the inner lining of the garment and how much more beautiful you are. Your jealousy will be removed from you. You will be assigned, if one of your husbands makes it, you'll be assigned to a husband to whom you were married or widowed from when you died. If you get divorced, you'll be assigned to a different man. So if you are a super wonderful Islamic woman and you should be way up there at the highest Jannah, but the guy you happen to be married to when you died barely makes the lowest Jannah, you get to be with him. You don't get to be where you are, and you don't get to earn anything. Your only chance is that he doesn't make it at all, and so then you get assigned to someone at the level that you earned. Like, this is just insanity, right? So, there's that hadith, and then the one other hadith I wanted to talk about was about the hot woman in a mosque. So there was this gorgeous woman in the mosque with Muhammad, and all the men were staring at her butt when she was praying instead of paying attention to Muhammad. So what does Muhammad say? He says all the women need to get to the back of the mosque now.
Divide
he doesn't
them.
say, stop lusting over this woman. She hasn't done anything. Leave her alone. No, women need to go to the back of the mosque. That's what he said.
And that's where they stay. That's back in the back of the mosque during prayer. In the back of everything when it comes to Islam.
I don't know if this is a serious comment or not, but Ridwan Abdullah came into the chat. He said, the book is for humankind, a mercy, unless you're not part of mankind and vile. Well, I'm going to assume that you just joined us and you didn't actually hear anything that we described, but I'll go ahead and repeat some examples for you, Ridwan. Is it a mercy for mankind that a child under 9 can be married to a man by her father without any input from her, and then the man who has married her i.e. bought her, can do whatever he wants to her. Let me know if that is a mercy for mankind.
Oh
And
my
Mary will be
goodness.
right back,
You
which is
know,
fine. Gives me a chance to finally put up some of these comments that I couldn't get up because she talks too much. Super chat from the Dashing Rogue. Some donation for the good work. Thank you very much for that donation. Carol asked, how is FGM a courtesy to the husband? And I don't know. The only thing that I can think of is why this would be a courtesy to the husband is it turns the woman into more of less desiring of having sex, so you can be confident that she doesn't want to have sex with someone other than you because she
she's
doesn't want
gonna
to have
be a
sex with
virgin.
anyone.
She's gonna remain a virgin for the man, and also that is to so women. It also shows you that the hate in Islam of women, and also it shows you the oppression and the violence towards women because they perform these things, and it literally robs the woman of all pleasure. The only person who's getting pleasure in this situation is the man, not the woman. You don't exist.
Here's the crazy thing. Muhammad also taught Galen's two seeds theory. And the two seeds theory is that women and men both ejaculate liquids that create the baby. So he was teaching that women actually have to orgasm to have babies, even though because this was something that Galen, who is a Greek, imagine the difference between a society in which women should be cut so that they can't experience pleasure, and another society in which an argument is seriously made and is generally believed that women can't have children at all unless they have orgasms.
Oh my goodness. You know what? Those things, wow.
Definitely.
Like, let me tell you something. Like, if you look at the track records of Muhammad, you look at his life, and then you look at the life of Christ. You know, Jesus Christ is God who came in the flesh, right? If you look at the life of Muhammad and the way he lives his life and his laws and how he look at people and deals with people and divides humanity, Muhammad would be a great horror story writer. He would be a great horror story writer. But if you look at those two lives, even if Jesus Christ wasn't God, which he is God, somebody gives you a choice of these two characters, which one you're gonna follow? Whoever you follow shows your heart. That's if you do it knowingly. Many Muslims are burned into the religion, right? But those who already know the truth and you can make a decision and you're still sitting there saying that it is okay to marry a child, that should show you where your heart is. And that should tell you where you're going. And you better repent. Because literally, with comments like this, time is not on your side. You better repent and get it right with God. Because in our Bible, God told us, do not hurt these little ones. But in Islam, you can have sex with these little ones. Come on. Like, if I knew before I converted, if I knew what I know today, anyone in their right mind will reason. I'm sick of this. Like, I am sick of it. And these Muhammad followers, they are a bunch of cowards because They hide behind their keyboards and they say whatever they want to say. And again, it's the same thing that they do outside. They come behind you, you talk about the truth, they come surprise you and they stab you, just like they did, they do to many people. So,
Definitely. You made a comment about them hiding behind their keyboards, and that's exactly what Reda One is doing. Galen knew nothing. A simple question. Where does babies come from? Whatever. You guys assume with no proofs from the Quran. Reda and I have posted the link to you personally and in a pinned comment in the chat as well. If you want to come up and talk with us, we can see how much we know and compared to how much you know about these so-called proofs from Quran. We probably know a bit more about Islam than you do, but maybe we're wrong. Maybe there is no need to reason without proof, as you said, and you can come up here and show us that we're wrong about Islam. You can defend your great God and your great prophet and show us how we're just Islamophobes who know nothing. This is your opportunity. Follow the link, come up and talk with us.
Thaddeus is US. They refuse to reason. Refuse to reason.
Indeed. If they were reasoning, they would not be Muslims.
Okay. I pulled up, if you'll share my screen, I pulled up the verse that describes marrying prepubescent girls. Oh, Prophet, when you divorce your women, divorce them at their iddah, prescribed periods, and count their iddah periods, and fear Allah, your Lord, and turn them not out of their husband's home, blah, 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 blah. Wait, where is those who have not yet? Oh, wait, I'm on the wrong one. Goodness, let me find it. Here it is. And those of your women who have passed the age of monthly courses, their iddah is 3 months. And for those who have no courses, their iddah is 3 months likewise. So those who have no courses, if you look at the Arabic, the form of the verb is this continuing form. So it's usually translated as those who have not yet menstruated. A very, very little translation would be those having not menstruated. And we know that this is specifically about women who are immature, because we find out from all of the from the commentaries what the context is. So we find out those who in menopause and those who don't have menses. This is Ibn Kathir. Let me make this bigger for everybody. Ooh, nice and big. There we go. So this is about those whose menstruation has stopped due to older age. The same for the young who have not yet reached the years of menstruation. Every single reputable Islamic commentator understands that this is talking about the prepubescent, and only iddahs are prescribed for wives who have had sex. So if you haven't had sex, there's no iddah. You just send her on her way. She has no iddah. So this explicitly is saying that for those little girls who have never menstruated because they are so young, whom you have sexually penetrated, their iddah is this long. So they're talking about how Muhammad had already given a partial. Yes, there is no opinion. This is not my opinion, child. This is not my opinion. This is the rule of the Islamic scholars.
So let me ask Redawan here. Well, first of all, why does your God give a waiting period for girls who haven't menstruated if they're not pregnant? And two, how is your opinion that you are reading into the verse more valid than the opinion of Ibn Kathir, Al-Tabri, Al-Qurtubi, whoever else we go to? We can go to any classic tafsir whatsoever, they're going to say the same thing. They all agree that this verse is about girls who are too young to have menstruated, and they are now being divorced by their husbands, which means, one, they had to be married, and two, they had to have sex or there would be no waiting period.
Yep, and then here is the hadith that's about this. So again, this is Ibn Kathir saying that the same for the young who have not yet reached the years of menstruation. That's Ibn Kathir. That's not me. Go down here and we'll find out that for Allah's really stupid and he forgets what he ought to tell people. And so one of the things that happened is that Allah was telling people about how long people should wait, and he just forgot to tell them what to do about these women who don't menstruate. So Sa'id ibn Jubair said, that Ubay ibn Ka'b said to Muhammad, "Oh, Allah's messenger, some women were not mentioned in the Quran, the young, the old, and the pregnant." So now that Allah has gotten this reminder from Ibn Ka'b, which he apparently needed very badly, Allah remembered to reveal the next part of his Quran, which is eternal. And so he revealed this portion. So this portion is about the women who are not mentioned in the Quran, considering their iddah, the young, the old, and the pregnant. So this is specifically about married women who have had intercourse with their husbands who do not menstruate because they are, what does it say? Young. There are three classes: the old, the young, and the pregnant. There are three classes in the verse. The old, the young, and the pregnant again. You have past the age, that's the old. For those who have not yet menstruated, those are the young. And then finally it says, until they lay down their burdens, is the pregnant. Right there, same categories. Young, old, pregnant, that Allah accidentally forgot to include the first time when he was giving instructions. How forgetful of him.
You mean Muhammad?
Well, is there a difference between Allah and Muhammad? That's
Allah is the imaginary one. You got this, and the one that Muhammad created. So everything is Allah said, right?
So yeah, exactly. The funny part is, of course, that Muhammad's scribes, they regularly made suggestions for changing the Quran, and he's like, "Yep, sounds better." And then they're like, "Wait a minute, I just changed the Quran, the supposed eternal word of Allah. Am I a prophet?" And then they apostatized. But Godilah earlier asked about the occasion of the verse 65:4, and I think that's what you just gave, right? That Muhammad was reminded that he didn't cover these certain classes, and then Allah revealed 65:4.
Yep. Yeah. So that is, according to all the classical scholars, the reason why 65:4 came down is someone asked about the little bitty girls who were having sex with their husbands. Now, it was common in the culture before this time, and in lots of cultures, because neither girls nor boys have really had any say about who they married, that marriages would be arranged from birth. But that did not mean that intercourse was normative before birth. I don't think that they had little baby girls, adult men having sex with little baby girls until Muhammad. There's some very good reasons to think that this was not part of the culture and that Muhammad introduced it.
So is everything else he introduced to please himself. And it's still going on today. This is still being practiced today. Muhammad marries 11 wives, and they still marry them today. So he's actually becoming a broken record.
Yeah, so Redouan said, only certain people will know certain things. The verses talk about women and not children. Redouan, what is your certain person who knows that this is about women? Because every single classic scholar of Islam knew this was about children or women who hadn't yet reached puberty. So do tell us what certain person knows that.
He's lying to cover it up. He's just doing what is, good for Islam. He knows the truth. He knows the truth, but he cannot say the truth because he's so afraid he think he's gonna go to hell.
But Allah can't send anyone to hell because Allah doesn't exist. Anyway, he's scripted hell too. So
yeah, he's gonna go to hell anyways if he still think like this and follow Allah, who doesn't really exist. You're following Muhammad. These two just complicates everything.
Yeah. He just, and of course, Muhammad had a big list of prerogatives that other men were not allowed to have. And that's supposed to be proof that he's a prophet. My question is, how is he different from any other false prophet? Because the first thing that happens when you have a false prophet is that he begins making prophecies about his own penis. Like, that is incredibly common. If you're making prophecies about your penis, you're not a prophet. I'll just go out and say that because, Jim Joe, all these different people are making David Koresh, all of the fake gurus in India who run these crazy cults where they get stupid white chicks to come and be enlightened with their penis again. It always ends up being about their penis somehow. So that's like the number one sign of a false prophet, is that a lot of his prophecies have to do with his junk. And a huge number of Muhammad's prerogatives were either that he got to be rich, right? Or he got to have sex with people that normally one would not get to have sex with. So he specifically had a prerogative to marry all of his cousins that he wanted to marry. He had another prerogative that if he lusted after a woman, that her husband had to divorce her, and so that he could have sex with her, because nikah just means sex, and it doesn't even mean that they'll stay married. And it's really interesting because there's specifically a hadith about Aisha talking about how she used to despise the women who gave themselves to Muhammad. And my question is, oh, really? Who are these women? Because these women do not make the list of his wives. The only woman who, quote, offered herself to Muhammad that he actually married was that, and then had intercourse with, was his daughter-in-law.
His adopted son, wife.
Zainab, which made it, according to all the standards of the time, that would be incest. So he had that incestuous marriage, but when he married her, it wasn't when she was offering herself. So that means there are other women who are offering themselves to Muhammad, and he was having nikah with, and then they just did not remain a wife. Another point is that the word nisa, whenever you look in the Quran, does not mean wife. It just means does not mean a woman as in an adult. It just means a female. If you look, for example, about where it talks about killing the male infants and then letting the females live, at the time of Moses, the word that's used there is nisa, again, just for female, not for an adult woman. So it says, and then they killed your males and let the nisa live. And so it doesn't mean an adult female. It just means a female, period. That's all it means. Because there it's talking about infants right at birth, being killed at birth.
So Lloyd is still watching apparently, and he encouraged me to bring the sharia back up, since our friend here wanted us to. Wanted it in quotes here. TRS Cartoons has joined the chat. I'm going to leave him in the waiting room for a minute here, but we'll bring him up in a second. So here are the sources of Pakistani law include the Hidayah and the Digest of Mohammedan Law, Principles of Mohammedan Law. Here is a passage from one of those books. This is part of Pakistani law. When a man has had sexual intercourse with a girl under the age of 9 years old, he goes to jail. Oh, wait, no, that's not what it says. And has ruptured the parts, it is unlawful for him. Oh, okay, it's unlawful for him to have further connection with her, but she's not released from her ties. In other words, she's still required to be married to him. He just isn't allowed to have sex with her anymore because he destroyed her private parts. What an amazing mercy here. Oh, but that was just Pakistan. They're really screwed up, right? Let's look at what the Reliance of the Traveler says. First of all, there's no waiting period for a woman divorced before having sexual intercourse with her husband. All fine and good. Wait a minute. How does that relate to 65.4? A waiting period is obligatory for a woman divorced after intercourse, whether the husband and the wife are prepubescent, have reached puberty, or one has and the other has not. And just in case there's any doubt, intercourse means copulation. So if the wife is prepubescent and the husband has sex with her, if the husband is prepubescent and the woman has sex with him, or they're both prepubescent, doesn't matter. There's a waiting period, which means what? What does that mean, Redouan? That means that sex before puberty, marriage before puberty is legal. And it's right here in the Sharia. But, this is just some people's opinions. Just some opinion about something, apparently. Continuing, when a woman has been made love to, she has to perform the purificatory bath. She must repeat ghusl if two conditions exist. She is not a child, but rather old enough to have sexual gratification. Congratulations, underage girls who've been forced to have sex with their husband. You are exempt from mandatory washing after having sex with your husband. Congratulations. Islam is a mercy. And I probably should have read that. Also, from Reliance, a full indemnity is paid for injuries which paralyze these members, or for injuries to the peritoneal wall between the vagina and the rectum, so they become one aperture. So, another mercy. When the little girl has her body destroyed by her husband trying to penetrate her when she's a tiny little child, she gets monetary compensation. Isn't Islam so amazing, so merciful to the women?
So disgusting to mankind.
But here's a second opinion on that obligatory washing. If a person has sexual intercourse with a minor girl, ghusl will not be obligatory on her, but in order to get her into the habit, she should be made to bath. So it's not obligatory, but go ahead and make her do it anyway so she gets in a habit. So that when you continue to have sex with her and she reaches puberty, then she'll already be in the habit of doing the ritual bath and she won't have a problem with continuing to do it. Amazing, amazing stuff here. If a woman is underage, but not so small that if one has intercourse with her, there is a fear of the vaginal tissues tearing to such an extent that the vagina and anus will virtually become together, then by the insertion of the glands of the penis into her vagina, ghusl will become fard on the man if he has reached the age of puberty. So, just so you know, if the man has reached puberty and the girl hasn't, he still has to do the obligatory washing. Islam thinks of everything, and this is covered in great detail. But of course, we don't know anything. We're just making stuff up because we're Islamophobic or whatever.
Yeah.
It adds in parentheses, however, if there is aforementioned fear in a very minor girl, then the mere insertion of the penis does not render ghusl obligatory. So in other words, if the girl is so tiny that you are afraid of tearing her and you have to just put the tip in just only, then no worries, no mandatory washing. This is the Sharia. This is the beautiful Sharia law that we Islamophobic people just do not understand.
And I am so tired of that word, Islamophobe. Like, that is so reversed. Like Crimea River. Because right now, I think the persecution is on the church and Christians.
So we're going to go ahead and bring TRS Cartoons in here. Hello, TRS Cartoons.
Hello.
Welcome. We already know your position that there's nothing wrong with having sex with minors. So you're consistent with the Quran.
You're cutting out.
Heavy breathing.
Yeah, I know. Like,
There's a lot of background noise on your end.
it's actually
I'm
creepy,
outside.
Yeah, it's wind or something.
Yes, wind. I'm outside.
That's better. Yeah, could you keep yourself on mute when you're not talking because it's super loud and you're being assaulted by a cat?
Okay.
So what did you want to say?
Well, I don't know.
Well,
Have you listened to that third testament I give you? Since you
alrighty. He
Yeah,
doesn't
get
know
him
what he
off.
wants to say, so I muted him.
Distraction.
We also have Hawk Ducking, an ex-Muslim. Welcome, Hawk. Or not.
I think
So
it's muted. Oh,
No,
yeah.
he jumped off as soon as
Yeah.
I added him.
Well, he may have just lost connection.
Yeah, I don't think he did intentionally. But
Well,
either way, he disconnected. So TRS, if you think of what you wanted to say, go ahead and unmute yourself. But we don't want to just listen to a bunch of background noise if you have nothing to say.
Okay.
So we have also Khalid came into the chat, and I welcome
have you
him.
listened to that third testament I give you? A
There is
link
no third
to?
testament. There is no third
I
testament.
believe there is. I'm a prophet of it.
Oh no!
Okay.
Hey, are you the guy who thinks that your father was a prophet,
Whose father was a prophet?
or do you just think you're a prophet? Do you think your dad?
I just
was,
think I'm a
next
prophet.
Muhammad,
Oh my God, you're so lost.
No,
but it's just you. You're a prophet.
you're all lost. You're going to hell.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You're bad kids.
Alrighty.
You sound like you're in hell right now, the way you're breathing.
I went ahead and
think
kicked
that
him
was-
out.
Just
Because-
wind, though, because if it was just wind, then it would not be.
I know, right?
I mean, if he was, coming up and trying to defend Islam or whatever, I would have let him speak, even though he's clearly crazy. But if he's going to try to get us into his cult he founded, bye-bye.
He's a prophet.
Well, there's a really interesting guy who thinks that he's the next prophet after Muhammad, or his dad was next prophet after Muhammad. And I was wondering if because I've talked to him before, and he's constantly everywhere trying to convert people to. And the funny thing is, you know how whenever they do the paraphrases and translation of the Quran, that they have like quotations that they put over the added words. Well, his father put the same quotations in his own thing. But why would you be paraphrasing your own prophetic text? Why would you be adding words, right? Because these are supposed to be the actual words. So he didn't know what those parentheses or the quotation brackets are in Quranic translations, and was just trying to imitate the style. It's hilarious.
Mary, but listen to this, Mary.
Yeah.
Think about this. It's logical. Why is these people here? Why is he in this Christian channel? It's because you have questions. There's no reason for a Muslim to come to any of these Christian channels to listen to these things unless that part of you is nagging you. You have questions. You have questions, my brother. You doubt. He's doubting, but he cannot say it. He can't say it.
Yep.
Some strange people on the live stream. Indeed. So Khalid keeps saying comments like here, "Hey, Lloyd, you are too an Islamophobe. Khalid, come up and talk with us live."
Leoid.
We'd love you. Also, earlier, Doomed came in here and said, "Blind sisters, can I share with you about the channel on which Muslims and Christians have debate instead of spreading Islamophobia?"
Islamophobe. What is the definition of Islamophobe? If you look at really what's going on in this world, Muslims are the one who is hurting, killing, stabbing, not Christians. Christians are spreading the gospel. They're trying to tell you that God loves you. Like, Islamophobe what?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, crying a river, like, get away with that. Like, I am sick of that. Like, Islamophobe, my foot.
Yeah.
So I also invited Doom up. So we've now invited like 4 Muslims up to come and talk to us. None of them wanted to. Doomed even said that he wanted a channel where Muslims and Christians can have debate. He can come up and have debate with us. You're supposedly blind sisters. He can come up and have debate. Oh no! As soon as I said that, he disappeared. He left.
Why
chat.
does it have to be blind sisters? Why can't he say blind Thaddeus over there? Why does it have to be me
and
and
wanting
Mary?
to love jihad us. That's why. They have this weird obsession with women. Like,
I know they do. It's sick.
there was this guy in my DMs for a month and a half trying to love jihad me, and I just kept sending him a hadith and asking him to explain them and things like that. It was hilarious. Anyway, if you'll share my screen, I have another fabulous hadith that I'd love for a Muslim to explain to me. So there was a woman who came to complain to Muhammad because of the treatment that her husband gave her. So, Messenger of Allah, my husband beats me when I pray and makes me break my fast when I keep a fast. Now, what is meant by this, makes me break my fast? It means he rapes her. Mm-hmm. Because a fast is broken when you have sex. He wasn't jamming food into her mouth. He was raping her. And this will be clearer later, right? And he does not offer the dawn prayer until sun rises. So Muhammad went to his warrior Safwan, compared to, this useless woman who's just there to please the man, right? He asked Safwan, who was present, about what she had said. He replied, he beats me when I pray is because she recites 2 surahs during prayer, and I prohibit her from doing so. So you get extra benefits if you recite more during prayer. But the husband forbids the wife from doing this. He's forbidding her from receiving the benefits given to people for recitation. And so he beats her for it. So the Prophet said, if 1 surah is recited, that's sufficient. So he's telling her, it's enough to do 1 surah. You don't have to do 2. So now, because your husband doesn't want you to have these benefits because you're not busy helping around the house, but instead you're doing extra surahs and he wants to beat you for it, well, you need to listen to him. So he is saying that the husband was right to beat his wife for reciting 2 surahs, and that she is wrong to want the benefits and the greater possibility of going to Jannah and the greater reward in Jannah because her husband doesn't want her to. And pleasing him is really her only reason for existence, right? And makes me break my fast. She dotes on fasting. I am a young man and cannot restrain myself. That is, he rapes her. Oh, you want to fast today? Well, I need to have my sex. I cannot restrain myself. So what does Messenger of Allah say? A woman should not fast except with the permission of her husband. So women already cannot fast if they are menstruating. They are not permitted to fast. And you can't make up, you just lose the benefits of that fasting you don't do. Like, you don't accrue punishments for not doing it, but you do lose all the benefits. You cannot make up that time if your husband doesn't want you to, because you get no benefits, and in fact you get sins if you fast without your husband's permission, because your husband's penis is more important than your salvation. So here is the rank in Islam. Muhammad's penis, other men's penises, women. Down here with dogs and donkeys.
You have a way with words, Mary. You have a way with words. This was from earlier, but very appropriate from Redouan, who gave up on trying to convince us we were wrong because we had all the sources and he had none. He resorted to insults. He said, "You girls love speaking of penis, sex, and child abuse. You belong to the streets." So let me just get this from you. Do you love talking about Muhammad's penis and Muslim men's penises? And do you love talking about child abuse? Or do you do this for a different reason? I'll start with you, Hadija. Hadja.
Me.
Sorry.
Wow. For him to make that comment is like sickening. It makes me want to puke. No one wants to talk about Muhammad's. I don't even want to say the word. The only reason why we're talking about these things is to shed light on this darkness. And maybe a person out there can really reason, really think, and save themselves and save their children, especially their little girls. This is not a joke. But the Hadith and the Quran is full of perversions that is something that you just think this is not normal. It should not be in the book that Allah wrote. So no, nobody likes to talk about it, and nobody wants to talk about it. But we have to talk about it. It has to come out of the closet, and it's coming out. And you know what? The biggest mistake that Islam has ever made is to try to spread Islam in the West, because people here are more educated now. People are more educated nowadays, and people are researching. Now, all the dirty laundry of the Quran and Hadith is out. Before, it wasn't out. Everything was hidden. But now, the more you try to spread Islam, the more we're going to know the dirty laundry of Muhammad. So if you don't want the dirty laundry to be talked about, don't try to preach Islam. Stay on your little corner and pray and practice it by yourself. And stop lying to the West. Stop lying to people. That's why people who convert to Islam don't last in Islam. Because they go in without knowing the truth. But then when you go in, you have to live by their book, which they weren't expecting, and they exit out. And all of a sudden, their life is at stake. People are like walking around afraid of, what would a Muslim will do if I say something? I dare you. Like, I've been through too much throughout my childhood for me to take any rubbish from Muslim keyboard jihadis or anybody out there. So stop hiding behind your keyboards. Stop hiding behind your knives and your bombs and whatever you're hiding from. Face the person, face the people, just like Christians are facing you and trying to talk to you. They cannot do that. Everything has to be a show. So you know what? People used to fear what Islam may do, but that fear is going away because people are learning the truth. So keep trying to spread Islam. Go ahead, sister. These people just make my stomach sick.
Yeah, so Mary, what about you? Surely you love speaking about penises and sex and child abuse.
Well, my question would be, why did Muhammad talk about it so much? Because all of these things are Islamic sources. And Muhammad talked about it absolutely constantly. He was constantly talking about penises. Like literally the first supposed revelation he had was just, it was just rehashed Galen, right? Actually, it was doing Aristotle's theory above Galen, and later he mixed in Galen's. Like, the clot was all about human reproduction. So from the beginning, Muhammad was absolutely obsessed with sex. There are huge amounts in there about who Muhammad can have sex with and how he gets to have sex with all these people. There are huge things in there about how, because Allah decided, so according to according to Judaism, God can make his people whomever he wills, right? He could raise sons for himself out of rocks if he chose to be Israel, to be his followers and his children if he chose. God has this power. And this relationship of being the child of God is what the relationship between God and mankind is when it's in its proper place. We are to be God's rulers on earth, but also his extended family, his children. And so this child language of adoptive child, between the relation between God our Father and us as his adopted children, are absolutely fundamental both to Judaism and then elaborated even more in Christianity. But you come to Muhammad and he declares that Allah is not a father to anyone in any sort of way, and that adoption itself is illegitimate, even though the idea of a non-genetic link was fundamental before, that there is a kind of childness that is not a genetic childness according to God. All this time he goes, no, the only kind of childness there is in in a legally bought private part of a woman that you impregnate with your own seed, and if that comes out, then that is your son. You can't have adoption anymore. We've destroyed adoption. So Christianity is, you have the right now to become sons and daughters of God through adoption. And Islam, there is no adoption period for anyone. That doesn't exist. And it doesn't exist because Muhammad. And so how does Allah reveal to all of us that this shouldn't exist? He makes Muhammad want to have sex with his legal daughter, which would be incest, according to the Jews, according to the Christians, according to anybody else. Having sex with your legal daughter, your adopted son's wife, that is incest. But Allah inspired lust, the zina of the eyes and the zina of the heart, in Muhammad just to get rid of adoption. And that's in the Quran. So yeah, we have to talk about his penis, because his penis causes there to be particular verses in the Quran. Without Muhammad's enormous lust, we wouldn't have all these verses, now would we? And without the lust of his people, you never would have had muta marriage, right? His followers were super lustful. They were always having sex when they weren't supposed to. And the ways he was trying to get around, like condemning them all to death, like that became a big part of the Quran and the Ahadith. So, yeah.
My gosh. I don't even know how I'm going to have my lunch today. This is
But just to be fair, Khalid did insult me as well. I pointed out that he insulted you guys, but he insulted me as well. He said, "Oh, so you are here unreasoned answers." Real creative there, real creative. If we're so dumb and unreasonable and we don't have any clue, just come up and embarrass us. It's really not.
Why are they even watching?
Yeah.
Like if I put something on the channel and I see it's not interesting for me, I'm going to turn it off. So obviously they want to hear your reason. Talk.
Yeah. So Red One said, you only expose your own dirty laundry. That's strange. I believe I was quoting from Islamic sources. I don't follow those. Therefore, they're not my dirty laundry. I do agree they are dirty laundry, though. So thank you for admitting that what I read and exposed was dirty laundry. Kim says, no, we actually get sick of talking about this stuff, but it always seems to get your attention, though. Yeah, interesting that Muslim men are always coming into these chats when the topic is sexual related. They don't come into all my streams necessarily, but they always all show up whenever it has anything to do with sex. Interesting stuff. So this was said earlier, but it related to what you just were talking about, Mary. Ashok says, stage 4 embryology, and like Ellen in the Quran 23:14, and earlier, I know I saved a comment on it. Well, it's I don't have to read the exact comment. Maybe I didn't save it. But there was a plug for my talk on Toronto apologetics with Tony Costa about embryology in the Quran. So check that out if you're interested, and see that the so-called scientific miracle of the Quran was in fact just copying, paraphrasing Greek ideas that were wrong.
Copy and
But
paste.
Ashok did come up with an actual scientific miracle of Islam. He said that the verses and material we were reading prove that Islam discovered pornography 1400 years before Europe and the United States combined. And we know this is credible because he cited a witness, Osama Dakdok. Just a couple comments and then we'll close out. This was earlier, but I thought it was worth clarifying. Get Thee Down said, if some homosexuality is recent, why mention at the time of the flood? Earth is recently created. So this was in reference to you, Mary, saying that homosexuality was a recent thing. I know what you mean, but go ahead and explain it yourself.
I'll explain that very briefly. So basically, the idea that people have sexual orientations as like orientation itself is a very unusual concept, and the idea that some people are homosexual as an orientation, as a sexuality, other than a few people who thought that Plato made up something like that, and a few people thought that he was probably right, but for the most part that was a foreign concept. What we now call homosexuality was a behavior or a vice, and not something like an orientation. So the word homosexuality carries baggage of orientation, and that's just how you are, and all this other stuff that did not exist until the late 18th century or early 19th century. The first sexologist, who was a communist and wanted to destroy the family, introduced the idea. So yes, it's Sodom and Gomorrah. Activities of same-sex intercourse did happen, and that did exist for a very long time. And it wasn't mentioned in the time before the flood. I assume you just mean Sodom and Gomorrah. But but that isn't what is now considered to be sexual orientations. This is recent concepts, recent languages. Lots of societies don't even have an idea that men can have sex with other men. Like a quarter of all societies don't even know that that's an option, much less that would be a preference. So that's very short.
Yeah. So the difference between behavior, specific sex acts, and this idea that it's a mindset, that there's a sexual preference. That's what the difference is. And many ancient societies did practice homosexual sex, but none of them had the concept that it was different or that it was replacing sex with females. Like they didn't have a concept of gay marriage. They practiced gay sex, but they didn't practice gay marriage, because marriage is a contract, if you will, between a man and a woman. They had no idea that you're just a homosexual who wants to marry men. That's the difference. Ashok also asked, is this homo thing practiced in Saudi today or in the past? Any knowledge on the rate of homosexual sex in Saudi Arabia, Mary?
Yeah, incredibly high. One thing that happens very commonly is that if you have a society that turns women into objects, because women are supposed to be the ezer of their husbands, helper not in the sense of happy little assistant. It means help in the sense of without which you are helpless. The only other being in the Bible to be described as being someone's help is God. So that kind of level of companion, corresponding equal intellectually and equal in terms of emotional reciprocity. Whenever you degrade women so that they become objects, then and they're no longer considered to be the subject of a true relationship. They're only there to be your field and get pregnant and have your babies and take care of your house. Then, very often, you have societies that become highly homoerotic and inappropriately transfer things that ought to be shared between husband and wife to between men instead, because a woman is so degraded. This was also the case in ancient Athens, where it was considered that women, they were deprived of education, they were constrained to their household too, and so you had the same kind of phenomenon happen. So right now in Saudi Arabia, it has incredibly high levels of homosexual activity, and just talking about people as being gay in Saudi is, again, not entirely, because the Western conception of gayness is only starting to pervade in that area. But the idea that there are lots of men who have sex with other men, yeah, it's all over the place in Saudi. It's incredibly prevalent, and not really stigmatized at all. It's just done in secret. They're the number one consumers per capita of pornography as a whole, but also of gay porn. So just to give you some idea of the environment there.
And I can humorous little story. Telegram is not very regulated. You can kind of just spam anything you want on channels unless the owner of the channel stops people. And every time someone would come in with a spam bot promoting pornography, they'd be have an Arabic name. Coincidence? I don't know. Redwin said, "Are women in Islam is protected by the Quran unless you can show me an explicit verse otherwise?" Redwin, that's not how things work. It's not that you can assume protection unless you have a verse otherwise. Are you saying that the Quran protects corn from being eaten? I mean, there's no verse in the Quran that says you can't eat corn, or says that you can eat corn, I mean. So that means that there is implicit protection and it's forbidden for you. No, that's not how it works. You know this. Use your brain. Show us a verse in the Quran where women are protected.
Oh, I can show you a verse where they're hurt if they don't do things. So
Okay.
share my screen. It's lots of fun. Oh, prophet, say to your wives and your daughters, and the women of the believers are the females of the believers, to draw over themselves their outer garments. That is more suitable, that they should be known. What? So the women of the believers have to cover. Why? So that they are known. So you know who they are, and so that they are not harmed, hurt. Hurt. Most of these are translated as hurt. So if women of the believers are not covered, this says that they will be hurt. So the only way that they're protected is they're protected by covering up, because if they get mistaken for someone else, they'll be hurt by whom? This is Muslim men. Muslim men are going to hurt the women who aren't covered enough. So your women in Islam is protected only in the sense that if she covers up enough, then maybe she won't be assaulted. But if she does get assaulted, then clearly it's because she wasn't covered up enough. There you go.
So there you go. An explicit verse of the Quran that says women are not protected. Even though it was on reasonable request, we met it anyway. Oh, but he said, learn the word explicit, girl. That's not explicit for him, so that doesn't count. Because it didn't say women are not protected in those exact words. He used the exact word criteria.
It's just such childishness, foolishness from these Muslims. They have a corrupt book, a corrupt and disgusting fake prophet, and they want to play word games. They will not defend Muhammad from what he actually did. They want to play games. So, again, women are not hurt if what? What do women need to do to keep from getting hurt, Redwan, according to that verse? Why should women cover? So that, why? Explicitly, it says women cover so that they are not what? Go ahead, write it in Arabic.
Harmed.
Go for
Harmed.
it.
That's not explicit though.
But they still get harmed, even covered.
Yeah, because it says that because Allah has written for everything to happen, and so if you get harmed, then clearly you weren't actually covered up enough. And there are other things that say that women who are veiled but are still like they are naked. There's a hadith about this, that the women who are actually physically covered but who are still like they are uncovered in some way. That means perfume. Specifically, it says if they wear their hair with a hump in the back, I guess even if they have really big hair naturally, oh well, then they will be in the hellfire. So these women, there is a category of women who are, even though they are overtly clothed, do not count as being covered up. So if you feel lust for a woman, it's obviously because Allah has written the zina for you, and it's because the woman isn't covered up enough, like obviously.
Exactly. Gabriel summed it up well. Because Muslim men have no self-control. That's kind of what everything is about today. Question earlier from our Kitsune. Do you guys know the hadith about Muhammad being jumped by dark-skinned men? What is up with those?
Yeah, I do. It's a Shia hadith. The Sunnis are so embarrassed by this that they purged it. And Muhammad would have dreams in which he was gang raped by angels, like demon angels, like or they were shaitans, right? So they were from the tribe of jinn, and he would be jinn raped at night and walk around with difficulty the next day because his butt still hurt. There, I'm not kidding, and yeah. So because this happened in his sleep and his dreams, and apparently this affected him the next day. There's also a really interesting hadith about Aisha catching him with a really, really beautiful young man in his house, and they were together, and apparently the young man had a bit of a reputation, and he said, "Oh no, that was just Gabriel who came to me in the shape of that man." Kind of interesting.
Very interesting indeed. Another question. So now, is it good to rape captive women because Muhammad allowed it?
Did not just allow, specifically said that they should not restrain themselves.
So I guess that's yes, because Muhammad's the perfect example. So we have Satya. Welcome.
Hello.
Hey guys. Good afternoon.
Welcome to the chat.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Well, definitely this is a very, very important topic, and I think the petrodollar that has creeped in, especially in the Western world, has been portraying Islam how peaceful it is, and how progressive it is, and how it has determined the equal rights for each and every individuals, which is actually not true. You know, when you get into Quran or Sirah or Hadith, you know, all of those things actually tells you a very, very different story. And when you look into the Sharia law, you know, we as an Indian, we are fighting, you know, for equal rights. We're actually fighting for Muslim women in India. We have just banned triple talaq, so it was just an instant divorce. Like you can give divorce over a text message, over a phone. Just you need to say talaq 3 times, and you are divorced, which is very, very you know, discriminatory in itself. You know, for half of the world's population, which is a female. So we banned it, and Islamic organizations are still fighting for it in India. When you see there is a movement against a hijab or any kind of burqa in the Western world, or that to Iran and the other places of Islamic world, here in India, the Islamists and those mullahs, they're actually fighting to determine that that should be the right thing for the women to do. Things like that. So in India, there is still a law under a Sharia law for Muslims women, if they get divorced, they have no right to keep their kids with them. I mean, can you imagine having this kind of a law and calling it equal and peaceful? No. So I think it's very, very important that these narratives, the narratives which is actually true and which is actually right and progressive needs to be there in the world, because the petrol, as I said before, the petrodollar has already creeped in all the bigger medias, the academia and everything is filled with by this communist and this Islamist, because they both believe in totalitarian idea. They don't let other opinion take place in a society. They all believe that either it's their way or highway or no way, whatever you guys call it.
Yeah, definitely. That, Islam is a system of political dominance. Obviously, that wasn't the subject today, but ultimately that's what it boils down to. And so, Muslims, even when they're a small minority like they are in India, they think they have the right to establish whatever laws they want. And if you have different laws, it's because you are discriminating against them. They want their laws to be imposed on the other 95% of the population. And that's because law can't change in Islam. Law is sacred. Law is part of Islam. There is no changing the law. There is no updating things. There is no modernizing Islam. There is only doing something different and pretending that it's Islam. The reformer will always go back to what Muhammad did, which is that law and society and his word ultimately is undeniable. Whatever he said goes.
Yep. And someone said law is deen, and actually that is literally true, that law is deen. A lot of times that's translated as religion, but it really means a code, specifically a religious code, but it means code. And it's borrowed from Persian, ancient Persian, in a complicated way. So Redwan challenges me, quit deleting him all the time. Oh wait, I guess Lloyd's deleting him because he isn't returning with an answer. So what man came with revelation, which exists today, except Muhammad? There are tons of people, tons of cults, so many cults that say that they have revelation. Jim Jones came with a revelation. Joseph Smith came with a revelation. Why should we believe Muhammad and not any of these other false prophets? Again, if you come and prophesy about your penis, that's the number one sign that you're a false prophet. If a lot of your stuff is about who all these people you can have sex with and how you get to have all this sex. So yes, there are many, 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 many people who have claimed to be prophets, both before Muhammad and after Muhammad. Many people. So give me one good reason, Redwan, why Muhammad is a true prophet and Joseph Smith is not.
Yeah, that's a good question, because not every single religion claims to have a revelation, but most do. And there are 3,000 or so recognized religions in the world. So what man came with a revelation that the religion still exists today except for Muhammad? Well, just off the top of my head, I'd say about 2,500 men. So there you go. Guess they're all true prophets according to the logic of Redwan.
Isn't it funny to say that, you know what, like your thought that whatever you were saying is right and whatever I'm thinking is wrong? Isn't that funny? That like means that you're saying that your prophet is a prophet and everybody else is false prophet. I mean, this is really funny. And you want us to believe that your prophet is the real prophet and everything else that came after him or before him is false.
Yeah, the double standard is real.
Oh, and
hypocrisy.
Yeah, if you'd share my screen, specifically on the beating of women, we didn't talk that much about Hajjah's history with spousal abuse and domestic violence. This is not only allowed by Islam, but is basically said not to be any kind of bad thing in terms of it will not be a sin on the final day, right? So Ibn Qais says that he was a guest at the home of Umar one night. And in the middle of the night, he went and hid his wife, and I separated them. So in the middle of the night, Umar got up and started beating his wife. So this guy heard it or saw it and came and stopped him. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you beating your wife? And then Umar got mad at him. When he went to bed, he said to me, "Oh, Ash'ath, learn from me something that I heard from the messenger of Allah. A man should not be asked why he beats his wife, and do not go to sleep before you prayed the witr." So a man, and that should is not even, if you look over here, we find out that there are other things like this. So no man shall be asked for the reason of beating his wife. So this is a prerogative of a man that cannot be questioned. You can't even say, why did you hit her? Was it a good reason or not? No, it cannot be questioned. And this asked for the reason of beating his wife. Remember that in Islam, you will, on the final day, be asked by Allah about all of your sins. Will you be asked about beating your wife when you face Allah? No, that is in a category of things that Allah will not ask you about. No man will be asked ever about the reason of beating his wife, because it is not a sin to beat your wife. Now, of course, Muhammad in another time said that the best among them are those who treat their wives well. But that still doesn't mean that actually beating your wife is a sin in any way, because it's not a sin to Allah. You never have to answer for it on the day of judgment, and you cannot be asked by other men why you have battered and beaten your wife. So that's what Muhammad taught. That's who Muhammad was. You can go ahead and take that back. I'm just going back to the stream.
I have a take on it. I would definitely say this comes from an idea when you see that Allah created men, right? Adam, and then when Adam was getting bored, right? He has nothing to do. He's getting bored. He created a woman out of his something from the chest, no, a chest flesh. So technically, the women do not have a soul, because Allah did not, created men and women equally. Do you know what I'm trying to say here? So the creation of a woman in Islam itself, it treats women as a second class.
Well,
women treat a body who does not have a soul.
So that's what some of the Gnostics said. According to, if you look at the the Bible that Jews and Christians believe, right? It says that the reason that woman was created was because there was no suitable helper. And again, this is a special word that means without which you are helpless. It doesn't mean an assistant. It's a totally separate word. That the man had, he had no one corresponding to him, is what it says. There's a special word for being face to face with someone who is of the same type, like a mirror type of thing. And that is why woman was created, because of all the beings that there were There was no being that corresponded to the man. So the lesson from that is that the woman was created from the man because she is the same substance. So she's not, and from his side. So she wasn't created from his feet to be trodden down on him. She wasn't created from his head to rule him, but from his side to be his corresponding part. And the lesson is that, whenever you surveyed creation, there was no correspondence to man. You cannot find, whenever people say dog is man's best friend, God says no. When in Islam they say that a woman is like a donkey or a dog, God says no. The woman is the corresponding help without whom men are helpless. But Islam went and took it and said that she's created from a rib, and that means that she has a crooked head because ribs are bent, and the top part is the most bent part of the rib, and it's the most bent part of the woman. Like, they took something that was remarkable. If you looked at the cultural context of the times, you can't find anyone saying this about women, that they are the correspondence of, and this high status, but and of the same substance with. So you can't say that women are, like, a lot of creation stories said that women are made from this and men are made from this other thing. But this is saying that no, they're one substance and they are the corresponding one to the other. But Islam took it and of course twisted it, messed it up, just like when there was when Adam and Eve are ejected from the garden, there are curses in the Bible given to the serpent first, Eve second, and Adam third. And later in the Bible, Adam is given the blame for the fall, that by Adam's sin, all fell, etc. But in Islam, Adam doesn't get a curse, and he's just said to be tricked. Like, he doesn't actually really, he sinned, but he was tricked, so it's not really his fault, so he doesn't get any curses. Like, everything's taken and twisted and turned sideways and just made sick and evil.
Definitely. Take a couple more comments from the audience and then we'll close out. Earlier, we read that one. John says the rape victims are being shut down by Allah and Muhammad himself. Where is the justice if Allah is true? Where is the justice indeed? That's a theme of the day, because you can say it's illegal in Islam all you want, and even that's debatable. But if there's no way to be punished for it, because you need witnesses and then the victim themselves is more likely to get punished, where is the justice indeed? Do they use modern technology to prove if a woman was raped? So
No.
In no Muslim countries do they use forensic science, as far as you know?
No, not for rape. Anything that falls under the Islamic law, it has to be the Sunnah of the Prophet. So that would not be considered evidence. You need your witnesses. Muhammad said witnesses, period. He didn't say
5 male witnesses. So their male portion is very important. So they need 5 male witnesses, as if so that part is very, very important, that here is, because they don't want any kind of other evidences. I mean, Islam in general do not consider the other half as important as the other half of the world. No.
Exactly. Yeah, if you only have female witnesses, that's not going to be good enough. You need female witnesses.
I think only 2 female witnesses count as a male, but I don't think that you can substitute all the females. That is correct. I think that you can only swap out. I think you can have 3 men and 2 women, but I think if you have 8 women, if you have no male witnesses whatsoever, that might not be allowed, even at the double counting women. Because there are things in Sharia that says you can substitute a male witness for 2 women.
This actually makes it impossible for the victim to have any sort of help, because it's literally impossible for witnesses to be there while someone is getting raped.
Definitely. Yeah, you don't usually commit a rape and on the street corner or something.
That's why it's a
people
rape.
can see you.
is forced, but they make it impossible. So that right there tells you it's impossible for the woman to get help.
So he never returns his horse says, am I mistaken? I keep hearing modern Muslim apologists making declarations about how Islam raises the status of women. It doesn't seem to add up. Doesn't seem to add up indeed. What are your thoughts, Haja, on the status of women in Islam? Do you think that Muhammad elevated the status of women?
Degraded it from the beginning. Like there's no, in Islam, women does not matter. Women doesn't matter. So these Muslim scholars and their teachings, they only teaching you the surface. They're not teaching you the truth about Islam. That's why you will find out after you convert to Islam these things.
And then it's too late, because then you're subject to the penalties for apostasy, which in a Muslim country means death, and Western just ostracization and social harassment and whatnot. Just that minor thing.
So I also have conclusive proof, if you pull up what I have, that in fact Islam degraded women over what the norm was in Medina when they came. So this is Umar whining to Muhammad. We, the people of Quraysh, used to have the upper hand over our wives. By that, they mean that they would not even venture an opinion in context. Whenever you find out what he's whining about, he was complaining about something being wrong, and his wife gave him her opinion, and he was offended by her venturing an opinion when he was just essentially using her as if he's talking to a dog and expecting no answer, right? We used to have the upper hand of our wives, but when we came to the Ansar, we found that their women had the upper hand over the men. So our women also started learning the ways of the Ansari women. I shouted at my wife, and she retorted against me, and I disliked that she should answer me back. So this is around the time that that this entire story, it's a really long hadith, talks about how Muhammad once again approved of beating wives because he had briefly forbidden it. And then after that, the only thing he forbade was hitting your wife in the face. So you're not allowed to punch her in the face anymore, but go ahead and beat her. So the people of Medina, the Ansar, the women had a much, much higher status than the Quraysh did, or the Muslim women who were in Mecca. The Muslim women in Mecca were much degraded compared to the women in Medina, period. And this was returned to its rightful and normal place, according to Umar, of course, and so this is a story of like how badly women in the Muslim community were treated then, and then continued to be treated, because Muhammad soon said, go ahead and slap him, and laughed whenever Umar told a story about beating his wife, and when Umar and Abu Bakr both hit their daughters in front of him. So this is, by the way, after the time of the Justinian Code, and I believe it is in and I can't remember the book right now, but in the Justinian Code, one of the reasons that a woman could divorce her husband in Christian Byzantine Empire was because he hit her. Also, verbal abuse was grounds for divorce, because no woman should be beaten by her wife or should be verbally abused and degraded. And it explicitly says that those are grounds for divorce in the Justinian Code. So why on earth do we need Muhammad to tell us how to treat women when the Justinian Code already says you can't hit your wives and you can't verbally abuse them, when Muhammad endorsed both?
Yeah, good question. And
If I may, sorry.
I have
if I may just go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
I'll be brief. I have a suggestion why women are allowed to be hit anywhere other than the face, and that's probably because you're not going to see any of their other body parts. So again, the idea of the public shame is the problem. That you'd see in public that they've been beat, and someone might think badly of you because they might have human decency and think that a woman shouldn't be beat. Well, as long as it's somewhere else where no one can see, it's all good. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I think that like a lot of things you guys have said is absolutely proving the point. I just want to extend and just probably add one more point. I mean, how would you know that whether the status of a certain gender is, or a certain race or certain color is whether uplifted or it has been degraded? Is how their representation in society in certain sectors. When you look at pre-Islamic era, and when you look at the Arabia, how many women entrepreneurs they had? Mm-hmm. Look at Khadija, right? She was one of the prominent businesswomen who actually employed Muhammad, right? So talk about there were a few so-called female prophets were there. I mean, let's consider they were not prophets. Let's consider them as a guru or a teacher or somebody as a professor, right? Somebody is trying to profess, or somebody is trying to preach their ideology or preach their knowledge, right? So there were a lot of representation of women in that culture. What happened? Like, give me any reference in Islam where after Islam, what's the status of, what's the contribution of a woman in a society at different levels? Zero. So how they have been upgraded? That I hope that answers his question as well.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I'm not seeing any upgrade. We've been going a while, so let me just. There are a couple super chats that I definitely want to bring up. Our Kitsune donation, no comment. Thank you very much for that. Dosh, Safraz is an Islamic troll that almost left Islam on Somali Christian TV broadcast last week. That second part's definitely interesting. So if by chance you see this later or you're still watching, let me know what video that is. I'd like to check that out. I did notice that Safraz came in. He made like one, maybe two comments, and then he disappeared. He definitely seems to have been disheartened, which is great. I pray for Safraz. I think that he is definitely, despite his posturing, I think he's very new to this Dawa game, and I think he's really struggling. And I think there is a good chance that he will ultimately leave Islam. So definitely be praying for him. And maybe we'll close out on this. Basil Jet, somehow this has to be taken to the public arena and Western cultures. And indeed, that's what we're trying to do here. That's why we're doing this. We want this information to get out. I did promise Onks that I would answer his question. So this won't be the last, but any thoughts on how we can get more people aware of what happens to girls in Islamic society?
It's very hard because, like, I just emphasize that these are the Islamic sources and that how Islam works, that this is really what is taught, this is really what is told, this is really, really what is declared. Like that this is Islam itself. These are the Islamic sources. That just really needs to be hammered home.
That works. Luckily, we still have freedom of speech for the most part. I think we definitely do in the United States. I think Europe still has reasonable freedom of speech. So that's the answer, is to talk about it.
Yeah.
More people talking about this, the better. And that doesn't mean everyone needs to, start their own YouTube channel or whatever. And just talk to your friends about it.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to have Muslims in your life, talk to them about it. You don't have to be really mean about it. You don't have to go straight for the jugular. Just, ask questions, bring it out subtly, and get people to realize what is really going on. The question from Onks, which is off topic, but he asked it several times and asked us to please answer. 4 Byzantine church museums converted to mosques. Hagia Sophia in Istanbul and more than 12 churches in Canada has been converted into mosques. And all we is worried about is Putin invading Ukraine. Why? Well, first of all, I'm not remotely worried about well, maybe that's not the best word. It's nowhere near the top of my priority list is the situation in Ukraine. And, we just spent 3.5 hours talking about the abuse of children in Islam. Obviously, that takes a bit more precedence in my mind. Now, as to the conversion of churches into mosques, first of all, that may or may not be true. This is a meme that's posted around in various different forms by Muslims, and most often it's just flat out false. It's just made up information. But let's just say, for argument's speaking, it's true. A church is a building. The church is the community of believers. The community of believers is not being converted into Muslims. So if a church building was no longer used and Muslims saw the propaganda benefit of buying that particular building and converting it to a mosque, then that's all that is that someone with enough money to buy the building saw the propaganda value of converting that particular building to a mosque. Any other thoughts you guys want to add?
Yeah, yeah, sure. If nobody has anything to say, I would just like to go last. But yeah, I think it's very, very important for us to keep building this narrative and start, regardless of how big or small it is. It's very important. Everything and anything that we are saying here is going to make a difference. If not today, maybe tomorrow. And internet has come as our savior, to be very honest. Otherwise, these things were already there, were being practiced by majority of the population in this world, and nobody knew about it, because the rosy picture of Islam, it was being painted in all over the world. Thanks to the internet, that a lot of these guys are speaking up, a lot of these movements are going on. So I'm very positive that Islam, within some time, will definitely crumble. It's just that we really need to control our politicians, because Islam is nothing to offer anybody or any individual anything in spiritual. It's all political. We have to understand that. And they play a very, very long-term game. Like how they're creeping in the US and in Canada, it's a very, very concerning. And the governments, and especially these communists, that we really need to put them into their place. If we don't do that, then it's going to be too late, because they all believe in the same idea. They all believe in totalitarian idea. They don't accept the diversity, and that is a problem. So I think we are on the right path. Of course, we are short of funds because we do not have petrodollars, so we might not capture the biggest media houses. But I think with this internet, and as long as the people that we are discussing within our community about the real picture of Islam, I think we are safe.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's a very good way to close us out. We don't do these shows to entertain ourselves. We don't do these shows to embarrass Islam per se. We do these shows because we care. I'm often accused of hating Muslims, and if I actually hated Muslims, I would just keep my mouth shut and just go about my life, because in the area where I live, the Muslim population is insignificant, far less than 1%. I would never have to worry about Islam. So if I actually just hated Muslims, I just wouldn't say anything. But I in fact love Muslims. I want to see them come to Christ. I want to see them escape the horrible, disgusting system that they're in, especially if they are females, because as little as Islam has to offer for men, has even less to offer for women. So thank you all for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day, and God bless.
Thank you. God
Thank you,
bless
guys.
you.
Thank you. Pleasure to
Bye.
meet you guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Nice
Bye.
meeting you.